Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone listening to the FATED ARPG podcast, episode number 128. Tonight is the special episode where we talk all about the launch of the new star on the ARPG horizon or sky, and it's Last Epoch. And despite some server problems and difficulties playing, we've all had plenty of time to check it out. Before we go into it, of course, as always, I have to thank you guys, as this podcast exists massively due to massive thanks that are owed to you. So if you guys have purchased a subscription, you'll be mentioned in the end of the screen. You can purchase a paid subscription on Twitch, YouTube, and Patreon. And that said, if you don't, you can always like, share, and subscribe to help out the podcast. And now, without further ado, we go right into it. Here is our co-host, Baylor Mage. How are you doing, Baylor?
Hello. Fantastically. I'm very much enjoying this game. It looks so much nicer than it did in beta.
Oh yeah, like the feel instantly was so much better. Yeah. But before we get into it, should we get our guests in?
Yeah, let's go.
Well, we got with us tonight Tenki, the one and only, with the 2 YouTube channels. How are you doing, Tenki?
Hey, I'm good. I've been blasting, having a blast. You know, the usual for a launch.
Last Epoch. Yeah, I can't wait to dissect everything with you guys. And but before we do that, we welcome our one and only Crouching Tuna. It's been a while since you've been here.
Yo, what's up? Thanks for having me on again, man. It's a pleasure. What's up, everyone? You guys are having a good day.
Welcome.
Good evening.
So far, so good.
And hopefully you guys can get into the game as well.
I just went offline.
I just lost connection.
I just said, if there's more than an hour of server issues on the start, I'm just playing offline for the first character.
Yeah. I played offline on the first day and then went online, and that was probably a mistake. I figured, it's fixed by now, right, guys? Right? Aware.
Yeah. So I started online and I didn't want to give up. Yeah. Oh, yeah? Tell me.
Yeah. It was rough. I started online and in a party with 2 other people.
Oh no. Disaster.
One very long degenerate streamer day later, we finally managed to get a faction chosen and didn't get to do any more.
Oh, that's awful.
It was a long day.
I wish I had that persistence. Like I played for a couple hours on launch day. I was like, okay, no, screw it. I'm sleeping. And then day afterwards, decided a couple hours is like, no, guys, I'm hungry. I'm gonna get a kebab and I'll come back. And if it's good, then we'll try. And didn't. And then yesterday I skipped completely because I looked at the forums. I looked at what people were saying. I was like, no, I'll just give it another day. I'll play tomorrow all day when it's fixed. And then today, actually, in the morning, I got some solid play in. Like 3 hours, it was working almost flawlessly. Apparently, only for people who were in, though, right? Because once you pass the in queue, it worked. But then it got worse progressively as the player count went up during the day and they experienced more difficulties. Have you guys actually looked at the Steam charts? Like 234,000?
Yep.
Still less than I was expecting.
Really?
It's about what I was expecting. A little less on launch day, but I think that was the issues. Overall, about where I thought it would land. Also, just quickly, shout out to the EHG community team. It has been very hard for them, I'm sure, but they've done a great job of getting info out there.
Communication, actually the best. That was fantastic. We knew everything that was happening all the time. Everyone did. Yeah. Like, not just us. Like, the whole community knew everything all the time. So there was a time where there was like updates every 20 minutes.
Communication good, yeah. Execution though,
yeah,
kind of bad.
Execution needs work.
Yeah. Exactly. But I mean, you guys are saying like your issues like getting in. I have a little hack for you. You can actually like kind of skip the queue if you connect to like Southeast Asia server or somewhere where you think is low populated. And as soon as you get in, you change your server to like Europe West, and then you go to your echoes, and you get in instantly. So don't tell anyone though.
Also, if anybody's still struggling, echoes are fine. Like if you can make it.
Yeah.
So we had a bunch of people in chat who like managed to just make it to around level 35 to 40-ish, and then just went, no more campaign, can't deal with load zones. I'm just going to go struggle being low level in monoliths, and they just played the whole day because I don't really know the exact details of how it works, but you're not really loading a new zone in monolith. You're like tacking on an area. Like it's not having any of those matchmaking problems. It's not having any of those load problems. So you just never leave. You just stay in monoliths as soon as you get there. It's fine.
Are you sure that is it? Because I don't have any insider information, but originally I just thought because the monoliths, you don't go into the same zone as someone else. You're making your own zone, kind of. Whereas with the town zones and the act zones, it's always one specific zone that everyone wants an instance of. So I guess that's...
I don't know what the specific reason it works is. I just know no one has problems in monoliths and everyone's having problems trying to level.
Yeah, which is so weird.
Just go do monoliths.
The reason was that basically you kind of like create your own, like you create your server. So like once you've created it, you have to do one loading screen, but then you basically like live there, right? So you're just basically staying in the same instance, right? Like, so the trouble is like loading the first time you go, and then after that it's fine. Whereas like in the campaign, it's literally just every zone is just like loading a new server. So I believe that's the problem there. Because like loading into monoliths the first time is still like not amazing. It takes like a little bit, but yeah.
What builds did you guys all start?
Ooh. Thorn Totems. Thorn Totem Shaman.
Cool.
People said that, like in my chat, that's a one button build. Like they said, there's one button builds in Last Epoch, and they named yours as an example. And I was like, wait, is that a one button build? Is it?
For sure is. It's not just one button. It's one button, and you're incredibly tanky, and it auto targets that one button, and you don't have to pay any attention at all. You have permanent full mana. Nothing hurts. Giga strong healing. Like, it's not super fancy. It's certainly not like an S tier build. On anyone's list, it wouldn't be S tier at anything. I don't think. But it's like B tier at everything and just completely almost automated everything. It's like very easy.
Okay, solid. What did you go with, Tuna?
Day one, I played Falconer Shadow Dagger on day one because I was playing offline, right? I couldn't connect to the online servers. And I played that to level 80, I think, that evening. And then the next day I re-rolled, and because I didn't want to play, so I wanted to play online, right? But I re-rolled because I didn't want to play the same thing. I'm now trying Marksman, Blast Rain with like Rain of Winter, you know, the classic, basically.
Yep. I think if I re-roll online, I'm going to play that. It looks awesome.
It's very cool. It's very cool. However, it's got like so like the progression curve, I would say, is a bit bumpy, but I think it has the potential to be like, you know, scaled up to, you know, like it's basically like it's got really good scaling in later instances, because like if you actually manage to get like decent gear, you manage to get like your freeze variant, high damage, all that kind of stuff, and it's very, very good. But yeah, it's pretty bumpy because right now I'm doing like 240 corruption, and 240 corruption is like 3 times as hard as it used to be. It feels like. So it's like a bit bumpy in that regard. I'm like dying from time to time. It's not good.
The thing that kills me the most is the undead Hydra poison burst. If that gets on me, I hope I can click the exit portal button fast enough, and almost nothing else kills me.
My issue is like looting.
I'm an explosive ballista dive bomb falconer. Basically, all the degenerate things.
Nice.
Explosive ballista dive bomb falconer. Yeah, falconer with ballista seems like really synergistic. It's insane. What made you pick that? Like, what's the special degen thing there about the dive bomb?
It has infinite damage. Because dive bomb scales off of your falcon, and there are several nodes in the falconry tree that say global, including one that says more damage per level and more damage per dexterity. Turns out if you get 200% more damage, the build is good.
Nice.
True.
Yeah, dude, some of those Falcon nodes are crazy. So I did like a very scuffed practice run only, where I did a little bit of melee leveling with a rogue. I found like an insanely good two-handed sword early on, and I got carried through half the campaign with it. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good. I was using a little bit of flurry and a little bit of all kinds of stuff. I actually was rotating through quite a lot of skills. And then, like you, Tuna, on launch day, I was set on playing that again because I was like, yeah, why not do the same thing again if you know it works? But then I was like, oh, let's try the shurikens, and I don't know. Apparently, throwing attacks are in a like really weird place. Maybe I misunderstand something there, but
Yes, they are.
I really like shurikens. I've played a lot of shuriken builds in this game.
yeah, they're basically ethereal knives, right? I mean,
Yeah, I just really like you pairing them up with like sync strikes, and then you know using the Likara gloves, which just give crazy amount of multi, and then converting them to lightning. You can do some like really cool stuff. Or you could also
okay.
play like I don't know. There's like so much stuff that you can do with umbral blades, you know, like exploding and all that kind of stuff. I really like it. I really like scaling
Okay.
throwing. It's pretty fun.
Well, then I'm confident that I can make a good build out of it. It's
You
just
can for
it was
sure.
a little bit struggle bus in the middle of the campaign. Like once you get
Yeah.
to the areas with all the scorpions that poison and bleed,
Mm,
that's where I died the first time. That's I actually started hardcore, but now I think I'm cruising. Now, like I'm past the god fight with the hero rod and the firebird thing. But what I just want to say is Falconer saved the build because Falconer is so good, dude.
Yes.
It's so strong. These Falcon strikes and like refreshing the cooldown when you consume the Falconer's mark, and it's just always up. I just alternate lightning shurikens and Falconer all the time. Falcon strikes.
Are you using Avian Arsenal?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check.
It gives
Probably
you
not.
300% of your base damage to your Falcon.
Okay.
It's a balanced node, and that does apply to Dive Bomb, which then gets multiplied by your Shadow Falcons if you're generating shadows.
Wait, see, I'm completely unfamiliar with all these things. I didn't even know there was Shadow Falcons. I know the Shadow mechanic itself, but I didn't know there was Shadow Falcons as well.
There are in Dive Bomb. It's a bottom right node.
Okay, I'll check.
I gotta
Bottom right sounds
revisit
like I can get
Falconer.
there.
Holy moly!
Yes.
I feel like you
need
can
to
make
check
some
out
really
the
cool.
Warlock.
Yeah, I'm actually not interested in Warlock, but mostly just like for reasons of like not liking that theme. But Falconer is like really cool, and there's like so much stuff that you can do. Like if you're saying like Shadow Falcons and all that kind of stuff, that means that then you could like spawn shadow like you could spawn like umbral blades on your shadows, and then you could like explode those. You can do some like cool ignite stuff as well. And I suspect it has like really good clear so long as it's not clunky, right? I think getting past the clunkiness is quite easy though because how fast it resets. Like
Yeah,
your
and
cooldowns and
how
stuff.
many speed buffs, like movement speed and attacking, throwing attack speed you can get from rogue passives and Falconer and like all the. I mean,
oh yeah,
there's so many situational buffs that make you faster that stack with each other. That's what I'm saying. So that even if it's a little bit clunky, you're just so fast you can overcome it just by brute forcing it with speed.
Yeah, my current iteration on the build feels like a fully geared Shift Cascade character in terms of speed. Where you just press your movement skill, tap another button, and the entire screen explodes.
That's cool. I actually don't mind that playstyle. I don't know why. Like I'm okay with it in this game, but in PoE, it's annoying.
I think it's because of the way the games are set up and scaled. Like in Last Epoch, you're very heavily incentivized to use multiple abilities and build around them and kind of synergize them. Whereas in PoE, it started like that. Like if you go back to the PoE beta, but these days it's much more about make one skill really good. Where's my Penance Brand of Dissipation screen wide explosion? You know?
But don't you also feel that it's also because of like enemy monster design? Like in PoE, you tend to have monsters that are twice as fast as you, like very often, right? So like having a gap in between like when you click a button and when the damage happens tends to always result in like shit being annoying, like you getting stuck in packs. So then you have to solve phasing. And then like there's like all these like different things that then culminate to it just being an annoying experience, in my opinion.
It might just be overall speed too. Because we move so quick in PoE, I don't know what mob type I'm fighting 99% of the time. Like there's some exceptions where there's like, oh, I don't have my evasion or armor yet, and this zone is full of quills, so I'll be a little bit careful for a second. But like overall, for most of my playtime in PoE, I don't know what mobs I'm fighting. I don't care what mobs spawn in the zone. It doesn't matter. You kill everything. That's just kill the whole screen.
Wait, you're assuming I know what mobs I'm fighting most of the time. Despite Ellie's great clarity, I go too fast for that.
It's the reason I'm okay going slower here is because I don't like the mobs seem to matter more. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm fighting mobs, not just killing XP globes.
I'll definitely agree. Like, I feel like I'm fighting mobs, and the fighting mobs feels better because there's like more back and forth and more like fighting differently based on what I'm fighting. At least at the point where I'm at. I mean, eventually you'll probably want to trivialize everything. And that's what I'm wondering is maybe it just feels that much better than PoE because I don't know yet. I don't have this feeling on what I'm missing out on. In Path of Exile, I know how a good build can feel, right? And so every time I play a bad build, it annoys me that much more that it's not at that point where it's extremely smooth sailing yet. Whereas in this game, I think maybe I'm a little bit more forgiving because I just don't know how good it can be yet. And I'm not too used to like playing smooth builds.
Yeah, that's fair. But the difference between like an amazing build and a like okay build in this game is much smaller than in PoE, in my opinion. Like the base power in this game is like 10 times what you would find in PoE. Just because I think item bases themselves, so long as you've picked up decent item bases and put them on, like your character's already okay. Do you know what I mean?
Like I would say the class I'm playing is just okay. And I knew that before I even made it. Like Thorn Totems was built. I picked it because it was simple, smooth, easy. I didn't have to pay any attention. That's where it shined. It doesn't like stand out. It's not like exceptionally powerful or whatever. But it's not held me back. Like I'm at 250 corruption. I'm fine. I can definitely keep going. Like it's fun, smooth, and easy. And it's just B tier, but still able to do everything and still able to like keep up and like it's fine.
Yeah. I think the difference there is that PoE is balanced around tier 16 maps. And the next big difficulty jump is Delirium. Whereas in Last Epoch, it's even with the corruption scaling now, way more gradual, where 100% of your scaling comes by either pushing arena or pushing corruption. And so you don't notice it as much. There's still that massive gap. There are builds that will go to 10 times the corruption rating of others, but you don't notice it because you're not putting in the time. It's kind of like Deep Delve in that regard.
Right, and you don't have to. You don't have to jump from 200 to 1,000. If I can do 400 comfortably and you can do 500 comfortably, like I'll just be at 400 and it's fine. I'm not forced to make that jump.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that.
But I do think once people get into things more, we'll start to see those gaps on the arena leaderboards, where I wouldn't be surprised if one build or another is literally 1,000 waves ahead.
Yeah. Like there definitely is some absolutely insane synergistic. It's also mostly because also like the game is so new, balance is non-existent for the most part. So sometimes you just get one outlier that is like, oh, this build is just broken. Like it's just straight up broken.
Falconer.
Yeah, Falconer or like Runemaster pre-patch, and still, to be honest, Runemaster is still insane.
Yeah.
Runemaster does look pretty strong. I think I seen someone posted a clip earlier of one of the builds that was rushing to 100, and it was a Runemaster, and it was just one-shotting things left and right. It was like I think they were using an arc-like skill, like just a lightning bolt shooting out and chaining between enemies.
That'd be Lightning Blast. Although usually that's played on a Sork, not a Runemaster.
Or maybe I missed it. Maybe I mixed it up. Well, I mean, the skills are class-based in this game, so...
Sort of. So there are
are there skills that you can access?
Yes. Like, for example, detonating arrow is the marksman mastery skill. Meteor is the mastery skill for Sork. While you can trigger a meteor from Harbinger of the Stars, you can't specialize it unless you are a Sork. And I don't think anyone except for marksman gets detonating arrow, at least not currently.
Yes,
I see.
Correct.
Well, I have no idea, but it looked pretty good. I'm going to try and look it up whether I can find the clip again. But yeah, outside of the corruption changes, what would you say is the most... Well, so we did a podcast before, just a week ago, before the launch with Perry and Dread, but that was before the patch notes. And so when the patch notes came out, we haven't talked about that yet. And I have pretty much, not enough knowledge about the game to put things in context for the patch notes. But outside of the corruption scaling changing in endgame, what would you think? What would you say are the most noteworthy changes from the patch notes? Like standout things.
Corruption changes?
Well,
Maybe?
next to the corruption changes, I mean.
I'm going to be honest, I didn't read the full patch notes because it was just too much.
It was how much was it? 16 pages or something, right?
60 pages.
60?
Yeah, 60. 60.
Yeah.
I mean, the real difference is the factions. Let's be honest. The factions are like completely game changing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, the faction.
Yeah. The
faction gang.
I actually heard Zizaran did a poll on YouTube, and 25% were merchants. Like only 75% Circle of Fortune.
Yeah, I mean, "were" is the key word.
Yeah. I know a few people that started merchants on day one and swapped.
So I think we're still in the honeymoon period where you can have a good time as especially a blaster playing Merchants Guild. My big concerns there, number one, Merchants Guild is really good for players who are in the rank 1 to rank 4 phase. And it is also really good for players who are in the rank 8 to 10 phase. But you will spend, especially if you're not, giga blasting, you'll spend quite a bit of your playtime in that giant middle dead zone where you feel like you make no progression. You want to get upgrades, you can sell them, and you cannot buy them. Meanwhile, in that time, actually, perfect example, my own character. I, for a very long time, could have bought only 1 or 2 of the items I was wearing as a Merchants Guild member. Everything else, I could only have either found or gotten with prophecies because prophecy abuse is just absolutely disgusting. And even now, I'm just hitting rank 8. I have, a 2 LP Legendary Talons of Valor, 2 LP Quiver. I'm about to have a 2 LP Woven Flesh. All these things that Merchants Guild would just be very hard pressed to get.
I mean, I'd see Merchants Guild like outscaling if you're trying to go for the one, like, the last few percents and whatnot. But I think, I mean, this is more of like a different criticism, but not really criticism. But people are like, oh, the game doesn't really have like that much end game yet. But the end game in this game is itemization and building your character, right? And I feel like Merchants Guild in a way sort of like undermines that a little bit because it's kind of like you're trading away your gameplay in that regard, which I feel like Circle of Fortune does really well because you're still hunting for your stuff and you're still engaging with the game system, like the monolith and all that cool stuff. And you find all this other cool stuff along the way, which also incentivizes you to maybe look into other things like other builds, or it feeds really well into the gameplay loop, whereas the Merchants Guild kind of doesn't. But I mean, I feel like it's kind of terrible in the way that it's implemented because people can access good stuff so late, right? Like having to grind up to like rank 8 to be able to trade LP uniques is like a bit bad. IMO.
And my biggest complaint, even before knowing the specifics and the numbers and all that, was that Circle of Fortune has the prophecies and lenses, which is a really cool gameplay interactive system. And Merchants Guild has nothing for that.
Yeah.
Why isn't there? Oh, there's no Orion's Eye on the market right now. So the Merchants Guild has put out a bounty. and they're going to reward you. I don't know. You can retrade one item if you have a first person supply in Orions, or if you sell in Orions, then your gold is multiplied by 1.25 times, or maybe it costs no favor to post it. You get the EXP as if you did, as long as you don't, take it down and repost it. Just something that tells you, hey, go out and do this thing and get rewarded for it, while also benefiting everyone else participating in the economy.
I agree. Like, there isn't much gameplay elements tied to the merchant skills outside of just buying your stuff.
Prophecies are so fun. It's so fun.
It's funny because it's like legit just like PoE prophecies, but not shit.
Yeah. But I get to pick it instead of just randomly.
Yeah. It's cool. I like it. It's a cool system. It's very gifty though. Let's just say that. Like, I think like it's easy to be like like, oh, it's cool because it's OP, right? And if it was if it was like much less rewarding, we would maybe be having like a less optimistic conversation about this, right?
I think I would have a less optimistic conversation about Circle of Fortune because I enjoy the trade process, but I would still have a very optimistic view of prophecies because they interact with the game in a cool way.
Yeah, that's true.
If it wasn't rewarding, I would say, oh, this is such a cool system. I hope they buff it so that people actually have a reason to interact with it.
Yeah.
It feels almost like they only put trade into the game because they knew they had to, right?
Yeah.
Because they knew that certain people wouldn't play the game if there was no trade and that censorship, but they wanted to absolutely 100% make sure that trade would not be better under no circumstances. That it would never be bypassing the progression of the game like it does in certain other games. And then they just overshot that a little bit, and probably in the next patch or two, it would be cool to see something cool handed to the merchant guild so that it's a little bit more engaging and more of a favorable choice.
I could be wrong, but I think if you were like absolutely degenerate level min-maxing a character, merchants would be better.
Yeah.
And super long run. Like, I can hunt my own 3 LP items, but I can definitely just buy them. Maybe not right now, but like in a week or two's time into a normal league. That would be like, there'll be the real expensive things for sale. The things that you might spend a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks trying to farm and not get.
Yeah, but that will depend on like how many people keep playing in merchants, right? The problem with merchants over Circle is that it is depending on how many people are playing it, and it gets worse the fewer people are in it. Versus Circle, it doesn't matter at all, right?
Right, and that's my big concern with Merchants Guild. Let's just say you had a unrealistic goal of, I want to get a 1 LP Ravenous Void. I'm actually not sure if Merchants Guild is the way to go, because I kind of feel like with a Circle of Fortune bonuses, you're more likely to farm it yourself doing gas bar runs after the cycle ends, because I think it'll take you longer than 3 months than you are to be able to get it in the Merchants Guild. And also, if that goes up for sale, it's going to sell instantly. And then you have to wait for the next one to be farmed by the entire economy.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone instead goes, oh, but that's really cool, I want to make a legendary, and they buy an exalted base and they slam it together and it bricks, well, now it's untradeable because the base they bought is untradeable. And so they can't even participate in the economy at that point, which means there's going to be even less of those amazing items. Because if you get a 1 LP Ravenous Void, I don't know about any of you, but I'm making it into a legendary. I'm not selling it.
I don't even know what that item is.
Think Mage Blood.
Very rare.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's not Mage Blood. It's like Mage Blood rarity, but they're just like a very, very strong unique. Yeah. But also it's not Mage Blood rarity, right? Because you can actually like realistically obtain it from like target farming it. Like in this game, like you can 100% target farm things and it'd be a viable thing to do. Like, for example, you said like, you could farm the boss, sure, but with Circle of Fortune, you also have like, I think it's a 30% chance to duplicate monolith rewards. So now if you're farming for like glove rewards, then you have a 30% chance to basically get 2, and it's different pairs, by the way. It's not the same pair of gloves. So you would just get like 2 different gloves. So it's basically like a 35% efficiency upgrade from the previous seasons. So I think that's good. And I feel like it's pretty obtainable if you do farm for it.
Without LP, yes. With LP,
without LP.
I'm not so sure. That's why I used that as an example.
Well, the general consensus also with the people that I talked to so far was that Merchant's Guild at the extreme top end, when you're looking for those 3-4 LP specific items, might be better. But like we said, it all depends on how many people will still be playing, and with Circle, you got the safe shot.
The biggest thing for me is the more casual person doesn't seem to enjoy it, at least from what I've seen in my chat. It's I had quite a few people say basically the same thing. They picked Merchant Guild, thinking they wanted to make money out of it, and then mapped for an hour or two and found themselves looking at way more items and slowing themselves down and trying to figure out if things were worth selling or not, rather than trying to work out their own build, and then went, actually, this is taking away my fun. I'm going to go change.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, it's great as like a degenerate 1%er in trade trying to like get all of the things, but we can't get all of the things in any game ever if all the casual players leave trade. Like, we're screwed. You can't, like, you live off the back of them. You live off the back of the masses. So if the masses go, trade shit, I don't want to be there, there's nothing left for us to buy. So
and that's always been my concern, that I think the economy is going to hollow out from the middle, where people at the very start are super enthusiastic, but as we get into that big dead mid-game portion between rank 5 and 7, or I guess 5 and 6, they're going to reroll Circle of Fortune, especially since, let's be honest, RPG players like loot explosions. Where do you get all the biggest loot explosions? Circle of Fortune. You're going to see people dropping, 20 uniques, and they're going to go, wait, half of those have 2 LP. I'm going to go do that. Even if Merchant's Guild was more rewarding, the FOMO factor for Circle of Fortune is insane right now.
Yeah. But TLDR, everyone who picked the wrong faction, go change to Circle of Friends. I mean, Fortune.
Also, I think one thing that's like kind of dissonant about like Merchant's Guild is the fact that aside for like trading with other players, gold essentially has no like intrinsic value in game outside of course the dungeon, but the dungeon itself I think is extremely lackluster, honestly. Like the rewards compared to like what you could do with the money in the Merchant's Guild, right? Because like, I mean, like there are no gold sinks, basically what I'm trying to say. So like, gold is just useless at the end of the day. So it's like you're selling all this stuff and you're getting rich, and then what? Like, what are you gonna do with it?
Then it gets traded back and forth, which is another concern I have, that we'll see price inflation to a point where a 1 LP Ravenous Void, when it does get posted, if a person who posts it knows what they're doing, they could post it for 2-3 billion, because they've spent the last 4 months trading gold back and forth with other people. And so it puts a barrier to entry in the market, similar to what we see on, say, PoE Standard, where everyone with money is just going back and forth with it. It's not being created or destroyed.
God. Even I struggle to buy things on Standard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely it.
Wait, you try to buy things in Standard?
I've tried before. Yeah, for testing things.
I remember, what was I buying?
Like 40 div for something that's like, should have been 100 chaos, you think? And you're like, all right. Shit.
I remember I needed to test a brass dome, and I spent something like 300 exalts on it because it was the only person who answered. And I was like, well, okay, I'm testing, but man, that would be rough if you had to actually play that way.
Damn. Now, I think you nailed it just now, Balor, when you said that Merchants is okay in theory, but in practice it means that you have to change your filter so that you're not only seeing items for yourself, but you also have to see items for other builds, and then you have to look at all the items and think about whether it's worth selling, so you're spending all that extra time, and then you list the item, and then after an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, it's still not sold, and then you kind of wasted the time putting it up, and it's a super frustrating experience. I feel like if you knew exactly what you were doing, it probably isn't that bad. But yeah, there's too many factors that need to come together. You need to know exactly what you're doing, so you're like efficiently spending time utilizing the Merchant's Guild, and then on top of that, there needs to be enough people playing to supply the stuff that you want to buy. One factor that we talked a lot about, and that I always bring up when we talk about the Merchant's Guild, especially in comparison to Path of Exile trade, and I'm curious specifically how you, Tuna and Tenki, view that aspect of it, is that unlike in PoE, you can't resell things, right? You can't go, I want a bow for 15 divine, but I can't afford it. I only have 5 divine. So let me buy a bow for 5 divine, right? And then I farm up another 10 divine with that bow. And then I sell my bow that I bought for 5 divine for another 5 divine. Or maybe I lose a divine on it. I have to farm one more. But I got the 15 divine then to buy the big bow. But that's not a thing here because you can't resell what you bought. So the moment that you buy something, it immediately loses all of its value. And it is essentially account locked to your account. So is that something like, how do you look at that? Obviously it has upsides and downsides, but how would you evaluate that?
I hate it. I think soulbound items is like horrible, right? Like it's a cheap way to, like, I think the devs, because the game is like very SSF friendly. It was designed with SSF in mind, offline, like you find your stuff. So they made it so they balanced it around the fact that like you're supposed to be able to find everything you need within due time. Therefore, the game is extremely gifty. And in order to sort of like mitigate the power of trade, they wanted to make it soulbound. But I think that it devalues items because like the thing about like items is that like you buy it and it's not like it's not dead when you buy it, right? Like it's still valuable. So I think like having items remain valuable is very important to them feeling yeah, like I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but essentially, like it extremely devalues them because you can't trade.
Well, it devalues the one individual copy of the item that you have, obviously, if you can't trade it anymore. But it also makes sure that other copies of that item remain valuable in the economy because yours is removed from the economy, so future sellers have a chance to still make money with it. So
yeah, I think the way I would explain it is it doesn't devalue the items; it devalues your time and your progression. And my big concern with that is it's going to really not impact the blasters. Like I've seen both McFluffin and Bina having a really good time blasting with Merchant's Guild. But it's the buyers, everyone else, the people who you rely on to make the market run, who are going to feel like their time is extremely devalued from this. How I would personally solve it if I was like, okay, I know it's a little bit egotistical to say, if I was put in charge of this tomorrow, I would solve it this way and make it sound easy. My first approach would be, if you fill holes in the market, you are rewarded with the ability to retrade an item. And this should be pretty infrequent. Similar to how some of the good prophecies are fairly rare, it might even cost extra favor. That way, again, we're incentivizing people to go out and participate in gameplay. And since it's rare enough, people are going to resell their best items. So it fills that hole in the top end of the market. Because right now, I think the bottom end of a market, I just want really basic gear when I'm hitting monos, really easy and well taken care of. It's going from that to, okay, now I want full legendaries. How do I get there? That I don't think most people will feel like they have a path towards. I don't think most people would get there anyway, but it's important for people to feel like they have the path to get upgrades. That's a big complaint I hear about Path of Exile, and also a big complaint I hear about Diablo 4. In PoE, people think it's too hard and they don't see a path. And in D4, they think it's too easy, so they don't see a path.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I do agree, actually, that's a good idea with like the ability to, even if it were just like you drop a currency and that currency can be applied to an item to break its soulboundness. But then again, I think that it's still, I don't know. I think it still sucks. Like, for example, in PoE, I don't think I hated anything more than when they did Sanctified Relics, right? Because it was just like so annoying.
Oh yeah, for me
like,
personally, I hate it.
Trade.
I just think working within the devs paradigm, that's the middle ground that they might feel comfortable with.
So I'm like on completely the other side of this. I kind of love trade locking you into never being able to trade that item back. It feels like it might devalue that one item you bought, it raises the value of that item in every other remaining copy, which for me is a negative personally if I was going to use trade to do that stuff, because it means I don't get to resell stuff. But it feels like at a more casual level of trade, it means more shit is going to be worth money still, because the next person still needs this ladle or whatever it was that you're buying, and instead of there being 400 of them on the market ready to buy. There's only 100 of them. So when you drop one on the floor and you don't need it, there's a market still to sell to, which is usually overtaken. So this is like everything has positives and negatives. It's not like the negatives you guys said is bad, like is wrong. Like they're right. It's just that there are positives and negatives to both ways of doing it. And I think the positives of this system outweigh the negatives.
So I was thinking of a different kind of gear there. You're thinking of you buy the item and you put it on. And for that, I agree. But I'm thinking of you buy the item and you use it to make something else, i.e. you craft on it or you use it to make a legendary. And the problem there is it makes the barrier
on, right?
Right. But the barrier to entry to get into that crafting, because you're not doing it once, you're doing it 10, 15, 20 times before you get what you want, which means one person depletes the market. And a lot of the blasters will be able to, replenish this because they're farming in like 1,000 corruption with the extra LP drops. Everyone else won't be able to. And so if, a Twisted Heart of Ukaros is 15 mil with 1 LP, and you can farm one of those in a week, but someone else can farm 5 of those in a day, then all of a sudden the blasters get ahead even faster and everyone else falls behind the pricing. So then they can't keep upgrade.
I think I was with you right until that last sentence, and then I think it's wrong. Let me explain. So you're saying, all right, so one person can buy 100 of a thing and just do the craft over and over again until they hit the perfect thing, because that's like what we do in PoE, right?
Yes.
But the way we actually maintain that in PoE is that the failures for us aren't failures. We're able to resell and recoup most of our cost. And that's why we can do that stuff. Because you spend, let's just say, 5 divines an item per craft or whatever, trying to do this thing that'll be good. But when you fail, it's sometimes worth still more. Sometimes our failures, 6 to 8 divines, sell back on the market. And then even the ones that are less is like, oh, well, I'll only get 3 back for this, but I recoup some of my cost. And that's the reason that we can do that sort of stuff. And that extends to the point where we're doing 50 divine crafts or attempts. And then the failures give us 45 divines back, or sometimes 60 or 70, but isn't what we want. We're still making a profit while we do those things. Without the ability to trade items back, you in PoE do not have the ability to do 45, 20 divine crafts in a row consistently. Like, that's not a thing you can do. That's just out of everyone's range. So but for the more casual person, it means when they drop an item on the floor, it will probably still be worth money if it was something of value to begin with. Whereas if you can trade them back and forward all the time, what we're doing, where we're like, oh, I dropped 10 of these a day and you only get 1 of them a week. Well, they're not worth anything anymore because I'm oversupplied the market. I can nearly do that on my own in PoE with like a right MF character, like 3 or 4 of us MFing the exact same thing can swing the entire market. Right? And that can't really happen as deeply with this system.
So
I kind of disagree.
You have to invert it though, because in PoE the crafting materials are destroyed, i.e. the thing you're using to purchase the item is destroyed by the crafting process. But in Last Epoch, the gold remains. So it takes you, to use my example, 1 week to farm 1 LP Twisted Heart of Ukaros as a casual, but I can get 5 of those in a day. I can do 75 million gold worth of crafting in a day. You can do 15 million gold worth of crafting in a week. So all the prices will adjust to my ability to cause currency to flow through the economy, not yours.
Right. So the 2 sides of that is buying and selling. Right? This is better to sell the item you find if you're a casual 2-hour a day or 1-hour a day player.
Yeah.
When you find items on the floor, you'll be able to sell them and make significantly more money. Does it price people out? Yeah, but all auction houses price people out. We price people out with one that's got free trade as well. That end effect for like a more casual user is the same. You're still priced out of the market. And that you're always going to be. If there's a market and there's a degenerate 1%er and casual Andy in the corner, they're never going to have the amount of money. The difference with this system is if they drop something great, it will always be worth money.
Right, but they're also unable to buy those failed legendary Twisted Hearts now to use.
Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
that is also a negative.
Which I think is a quit the game simulator, because you feel like you have no path to upgrades, and then you see all your friends with COF going, "Oh yeah, I farmed 2 of those yesterday. They're easy."
I absolutely agree with Tenki, and also like the issue is because like trade is in itself, like it creates a shitload of gameplay. Like it creates gameplay in that where you can choose to like trade, right? Like you can. I know like people cringe at trading, but like you don't necessarily have to be flipping. But you could be somebody that can create value out of certain things. Like if you want to create value out of like creating legendary potential items, like and you buy ones with LP and then you slam them together, and you make like crazy ones, that your profit variance will be relatively huge. But I guess like the market will always dictate that you make profit depending on if you actually get the averages of like hitting certain mods and how much people are willing to actually spend on those. So not only does it create content, but it creates like cool items that otherwise people might not be able to put back into the economy, because obviously you can't trade items once you've bought them. So there will never be like cool LP items on the market. I just feel like it doesn't synergize with how the game is designed, because the game is designed around items being garbage if they don't have LP, technically, right? Like they're still good items, but like until you've put something on them, they're not truly special. And not being able to trade truly special items completely kills trade, in my opinion, because that's what trade should be about. It should be about like, if you want to spend your time creating cool items, you can do that. And yeah.
And I also think if you're trying to remove the negative externality of someone buying out a market just to flip, allowing people to retrade the crafted items is a good way to do it. Because right now, the negative externality is someone buys it out because they just want the upgrade and they have the gold. And so you still have that. People still can't get the upgrades. Prices still go ridiculous. It's just they're not doing it to resell it. They're doing it because they can sell a different item that they can also farm hyper efficiently. And well, it's the problem of supply and demand.
I hate market flippers with a passion.
I think it's like market flippers create value most of the time, and like as cringy as it is, like it makes economies way more interesting.
Yeah,
like it's just more interesting. The fact that like people can specialize in different stuff, I think it's cool as.
I think flipping is overall a net positive to a lot of economies. It's monopolies that are the problem. That when it goes to a point where you can just own a market and set a price, that's when it gets really bad. But as long as there's competition between flippers, overall, that is a good thing for the economy in the long run, even if it's a bad thing for you as the individual buyer or seller.
But that's what an auction house lets you do. It lets you have a monopoly. Bazaar's the same thing. It's why it's manageable in PoE, because we don't have an auction house.
Yeah, and so I feel like
that problem.
The point of a Merchants Guild should be to prevent that, to reward people for filling holes in the market. Because if whenever you buy something out, a bunch of items flood in, well, then it's a lot harder to buy them out and profit off of that. You're going to constantly get undercut.
It's an interesting topic. It's interesting to speculate, but did you already, without me asking, by the way, mentioned a number of things that you would suggest that could improve the system? Do you have any more suggestions, like what you would like to see for the Merchants Guild or for the trade system in general?
Remove the limit to buy things in terms of level. Like maybe make the favor cost higher at low levels, but let people buy LP things from whenever they would reasonably drop it within the game.
Yeah.
I like the idea of them being able to unlock them, but I would have made all of the unlocks happen by like rank 4. So that it like still felt good for progression, but it's like the first day you're in there, you've got access to everything still. You just get that big, yo, got a level. I got access to half this stuff. I'm nearly there. Yo, got the next level. There it is. There's all the like have it just be real early.
That would work.
The first more front loaded.
Yeah.
Well, it depends, honestly. I think later on in the long, like when the game has been out for longer and the market has had time to develop, then the ranks that you have in the merchants faction or merchants guild are going to be the limiting factor to you being able to acquire things. But right now, the limiting factor to acquire things probably was the availability on the market. So it felt like an additional hoop to jump through to get to that level, just to realize that the thing that you wanted to buy is not available yet anyway.
Well, kind of, because actually Dredd ran into this. He was trying to buy a ring, and he couldn't buy the ring because the only ones on the market were exalted, and he couldn't buy an exalted ring yet.
Yeah, I mean, like, who would sell non-exalted, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna sell the not exalted ring. Like, you just gonna go, oh, wish that. Oh well. So yeah.
Right. But the problem is, knowing that player behavior, who's going to sell a non-exalted ring? What about all those newbies coming in who are still rank 4, who can't buy the exalted one and might not be able to for most of their playtime?
exactly.
Yep.
Damn it. Well, we are moving on to the end game and the content. We've already touched upon the end game being basically min-maxing your character. There's not a whole lot of things that you can do outside of dungeons, arena, and the monolith right now. But yeah, what do you think about additions that need to be made? Like with the future for the game, what end game content and progression would you like to see?
I don't even know.
But like, so people say like there's no content, but there is a lot of content in the game currently. Like, I know the gameplay loop is fairly repetitive. So it would be nicer to have like more variety in echoes, like more cool mechanics and whatnot, like for sure. But the game does have a lot of stuff to do. The only problem I feel is like, this is like subjective. I hate dungeons, so I think that content sucks. Maybe it would be better if like them to like, you know, maybe redesign it a bit or like do something with it, because I feel like many people share the same opinion. Like, it's never nice to go into a place that has like multiple dead ends and you're just like walking aimlessly to get to the objective. Because I mean, like, it never feels like they're almost never rewarding enough for them to be worth farming over echoes, and there is no like scaling system and all that kind of stuff in them. The only thing that you want is the end result usually, and their end result is usually not that good unless you're target farming a unique or you're trying to put exalted affixes onto legendary items. Especially now in comparison to the base game, since we have Circle of Fortune that's just like shitting out like 100 items at your with your prophecies and whatnot. However, I think that them adding prophecies has extended the gameplay a little bit, because it sort of incentivizes you to go do different content. But at the same time, if you guys like play like me, it feels like a chore when the game tells you to go do the dungeon to drop your item. So instead of actually taking those prophecies, I just ignore them and I try to block them with greater the thingies, I forget what they're called, sorry.
The greater lenses.
Yeah, greater lenses. So yeah, I mean, I think the game is like a very good starting point for 1.0, and having more mechanics in the echoes themselves would definitely make the experience better, right? But content wise, I think it's fairly fine. Like, it's not like there's nothing. It's not Diablo 4.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can definitely say that
3 times the end game. Let's go.
No, but like legitimately, there's a lot to do. Like min-maxing your character is like hard, and it takes a long time. And then you got like corruptions to push, and the bosses get harder. And then like Circle of Fortune on top of that multiplies your loot. It's like, it's very satisfying, but it eventually does get to the point that you think to yourself, I'm just farming echoes, right?
Yeah.
I'm just farming maps. Like, yeah, that's what you do in ARPGs. And when you get bored
It
of
also
it, you reroll.
ARPG, right? Like,
Yeah, when you get bored of that, you
grind
reroll.
monsters. That's the
And when
thing.
you're bored of that, you reroll game until next season. That's just
Yep.
They do need to add more stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like, oh, the game's perfect now and it's like the best or whatever. Like, of course it needs like this game needs Breach. This game needs Alpha. Like, you know, it needs those things that PoE has that just doesn't have.
Yeah, for me, I'd say there's a few things that stand out. First, I'd like to see a couple more timelines just to distribute the target farming a bit better. Right now, some items are rather difficult to target farm because there's so many base types squished together. Another thing that I'd like to see is for 2 of the dungeons to be buffed. Temporal Sanctum's really good. You can even
I love Temporal Sanctum, actually. It's fun too.
You can even go
it's
into
the only dungeon I like.
Yeah, just to farm items pretty efficiently. Especially since there's double mobs with time shifts and all that. I do not feel the same about Soulfire Bastion or Lightless Arbor. I feel like, okay, I need to get through this as fast as possible to go kill the boss, but also you need to stop and kill stuff to have enough souls for the Soul Gambler, so I just avoid the Soulfire Bastion. As a note, I don't know if this is a bug or intended or what, but it seems like the +1 LP from Jewelra drops apply to all the prophecies, so I've just been abusing that, and we'll see if that remains in the game for a while. I kind of like it, though. It's an extra gameplay level of, ooh, that Temporal Sanctum prophecy is worth more because it drops from Jewelra. And I'd kind of like to see more of that as well. I guess what I want is meta progression systems. The only one we really have right now is Blessings, and I don't think it does a great job because it's kind of just bigger numbers. I would love to see more meta progression systems adjacent to your gameplay and your character and all that.
I'm thinking, would it be wise to give Merchant's Guild like a gold sink, seeing that you make all that gold and there's nothing really to spend it on other than, well, I mean, Runes of Shattering are not enough to spend the amounts of gold that you're making. But would it be wise to
as well, though?
Yeah, true. The dungeons are gold sinks, but maybe something that allows Merchant's Guild guys to juice maps into a certain direction, or to juice
Yeah, that's
the monolith?
that's actually cool. Like if you could like put money into like additional packs that have a potential percentage chance to drop Exalted or like something. But that'd be cool. Honestly, like it would suck for that to be only Merchant's Guild, because that sounds like a cool mechanic. Because the game legit
Yeah.
just doesn't have any gold sinks at all right now, aside for the dungeon, and it just feels like you're throwing it away for the most part.
I was thinking of it as a sort of equivalent to the prophecy system from the Circle of Fortune. So I was originally, when I thought I'd suggest that right now, I was like, well, it should be for the Merchant's Guild, but if it's a gold sink, then being a merchant would already allow you to get it more often because you get more gold, right? You have access to more gold via the Merchant's Guild. So that would be balancing it. So you could make it available for both. Circle of Fortune, you'd just not be able to use it as often because you're not making as much gold, presumably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that would be cool.
Does the Merchant Guild like have anything to do with like dropping more gold and that kind of stuff?
No.
I don't think it.
Yeah, no, I don't know why. Makes sense that it would, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Nope,
Right.
it is no drop bonuses at all. And that's actually a good point. Why don't you drop more gold as a Merchant's Guild member?
Yeah. Feels like you should, for sure.
You just get punished for clicking Merchant's Guild. It's like legitimately a misclick. It's like,
Yep. Unless you're a blaster. And then abuse the noobs.
No, that would
Yeah, it
even
feels
if it was
bad.
just like a 1 or 2% more global gold gain would just be great flavor for the Merchant's Guild. You wanted to say, Tuna?
No, I mean, it just feels bad.
Right. But overall, I think the game feels good. I think the visceral feel has gotten a lot better from what I played before. And overall, I think the game is like, it's just this sweet spot ARPG between like it still has tons of possibilities, but the complexity is actually not so obscure. And if you feel like there's a lot of dead alleys, like dead choice roads are already pre-eliminated for you. So like there's still plenty of choice, but there's fewer things where you could be like, oh, that's shit, and I need to get out of it again. It just feels like it is the game that D4 wanted to be and should have been, in terms of it's just really accessible and it invites you to just jump in and play. And like 2 things that stand out to me from the game in general in the ARPG space is just the in-game item filter editing and fairly easy system. I would much prefer it if you didn't have to edit item filters to play the game from start to end. But seeing that that's kind of mandatory, I think also the game should have at least some sort of access to it. Sure, you can use third-party resources to make it much better, but yeah. And then other than that, the pressing the G button and getting the in-game glossary and just being able to enter something like endurance and getting an in-game explanation how a certain mechanic works in context, it's a game changer.
Actually great. I love the help panel or whatever it is, glossary.
I'm actually in the same boat as like how Jonathan explained it. As like I'm the type of player that doesn't care about alt tabbing. So you say like, oh, it's because you have two monitors. I do everything on one monitor and I just play window borderless. Like for me, it makes zero difference going to like typing PoE and then the word or the thing that I'm looking for in comparison to doing that in game. And most of the time, it's like more annoying to do it in game because I think like web is like it's like actually like so much better. Like all my settings are saved, all my search terms are saved. I know exactly where to look. Like, and also I prefer Filter Blade to making filters in this game. Like I don't know, maybe I'm just like so indoctrinated into PoE that like I've just become to like maybe it's like Stockholm syndrome, you know, like the games made me like enjoy the things that you would otherwise hate, but like I really think that stuff is like better. Like going to a third party resource or like a PoE wiki or something, and that information is there, and it's like blocks of paragraph. I can Control F, I can see exactly what I want to see, and it's not like minimized or like summarized. You know, it's just the full thing. And it's a resource that I can have that I can like relook at while I'm doing anything else. I don't have to log into the game to see it. Like I can edit my filter before the league launches. I can edit my filter for multiple builds. Like I prefer it. I prefer doing everything outside of the game personally.
I think I'm somewhere in the middle. There are times when I very much like that I can just hit a button and edit something. Like, okay, perfect example. There's one item that shows up and it annoys me. In PoE, I will just ignore it because I don't want to go edit my filter for one little tweak. In LE, I'll change it. Setting up a filter from scratch, I much prefer Filter Blade. It's so much better as an experience. I hate setting up filters in LE, so I just use the lazy version, which is, all right, here's a few items I want to see, here's a few things I don't want to see, and call it good enough and just ignore the items that are annoying.
Yeah. I hate setting up filters in LE, but I love doing it in PoE. And like actually I feel like what you said is been fixed ever since they implemented online filters, because all I do is I make online filters, and if there's something I don't want to see, I literally like Control C it in game, Control V it into Filter Blade, and it tells me like, oh, this rule is showing it, and then I just deactivate it, and then I click save, and then within like 3 minutes or instantly, whether depending on like whether I've been doing a lot of edits, it just like instantly gets updated in game. So
yeah, it's definitely a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah, like when you used to have to notepad it, I absolutely agree. It's like like that's not okay.
Oh, I remember that. That was horrible.
Yeah, but I genuinely feel like we've gotten to the point in PoE where like those things are actually like it's more beneficial for them to be like outside of the game than inside of the game. Because yeah, like the tools that you have access to as a web dev for 100%.
Oh yeah.
Well, I know where you're coming from when you say that, right? And I also know where Jonathan is coming from when he says that. We had the conversation on the last podcast, and I was like, I really think that stuff needs to be in game. And we had comments again that pointed out to me, well, Jonathan just said he doesn't want to do something in game that's impossible to make better than like third-party community tools. And that's not necessarily what I want, but my point is, okay, twofold. First of all, I'm not asking for this for me, right? I'm completely happy with how PoE is, and I'm happy to play the game as it is, and I'm happy to use a third-party tool to edit my filter. But they're looking to push PoE 2 more into the mainstream than PoE 1 has been, right? And I think that a big factor holding Path of Exile back is that there's a certain this percentage of the population that is willing to play RPG games, but that is not willing to use third-party tools for it, right? Or not willing to use extensive external resources to learn and manage the game. If something matters in the game to the point that you have to engage with it in the game, then it should also be possible to engage with it in the game. No one said that you have to have the best item filter editor in the game. But if editing your item filter is mandatory to play the game, then there should be a way to do it in the game without third-party resources. That's my point of view. And not for me, again, but just I think if you want to grow your player base beyond a certain point, that is going to be mandatory. And I hope that's something that they take away from this very successful LE launch.
I don't know if this is real or not, but it feels like one of those things where we're imagining a problem that other people don't have, because I've actually not ever had like a new person show up and then I tell them, hey, this is the Filterblade website where you do all your filters. Here's how you can follow some, and have them be like, nah, this is trash. I'm actually just going to not play anymore. Like, that's literally never happened.
Yeah.
Like, is this an imagined problem? Because it's not. You just said at the beginning, it's not a problem for me. I just want it for other people. But like,
no, I think it's a problem for people who don't get to the point in the game where they engage with Twitch streamers, right? Like the people that find themselves in your chat are a very, very specific subset of people that engage with the game online.
But then, how do we know that that's happening?
Well, wait. Let's back up here, because if we're talking about people who don't get to the point where they engage with a Twitch chat, then they probably aren't going to engage in filter customization either. And there should just be a default filter they can use that's okay. And that's what would be the best way to serve that.
Default filter, like never syncs soft, regular, strict, or some shit. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just have that updated.
They are not pre-installed on PC, right? Because I recently, last Monday, I went to a friend who started a couple weeks back on console. On console, all the never syncs are pre-installed.
Oh, really?
So you can just use semi-strict instantly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Then it's fine. Problem solved. But I feel like third-party software will be, or third-party tools like Filterblade will always be able to do better than what you can do in game. And in a way, I feel like this might be like very like maybe elitist ARPG like, but they create content, right? Like filters create content. In a way that like it definitely changes the way that you interact with the game. Because I think filters are actually one of the things that people that underestimate the most, that creates the biggest skill gap when it comes to like farming efficiently in FATED XL, and it actually even more in Last Epoch, because Last Epoch you drop so much stuff. Like it's just dumb how much stuff you drop and how many times you die like looking at it, and the loot tiles are tiny and you have to try to click on it. So like the less stuff you see, the better. Like you not seeing garbage on the floor, but everything that you do see, you pick up. That will like literally like double your efficiency in a game like FATED XL or Last Epoch as well. And yeah, being able to customize that further thanks to third-party tools, I'm grateful for that. Like if GGG made their own version and said like, okay, no more third-party tools in this thing, but like their version was worse, I would just be at a loss, and I think the player base would be at a loss too. It just would make the game.
I would never want them to implement an inferior version and then outlaw the third-party version. That's in no way what I'm suggesting.
You say like, oh, implement an inferior version, but the fact of the matter is that if an inferior version existed, maybe NeverSyncs wouldn't exist.
Actually, that happened because PoE.xyz used to exist. And then when GGG started hosting the trade site, it's not like they said, oh, well, PoE.xyz is not allowed to exist. They didn't outlaw it, but everyone just used the trade site. And at first, the trade site was worse, and slowly over time, it became better. And then PoE.xyz died.
They did that, though. That's different.
It is different in the sense that PoE.xyz didn't have as good access to the API as they had with their...
No. They had just as good access to the API. It was great. And then it was limited. And then it became behind intentionally. And it was behind by not just a minute or two, but by like 20 minutes consistently. It became unusable because of the API limits that were put on it. We didn't merge over to pathofexile.com/trade out of it being a better website or us wanting to. We did so because we had to, because the other site was made unusable.
That's true.
That is a different thing.
I remember getting whispers like 20 minutes later, and it's like, oh, it's the PoE trade, Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we were forced, 100% forced. There was no option.
But that's still like after, right? What I'm saying is like before, like if like, because like even if like something is bad, if you find comfort in it, it creates complacency, and therefore people won't actually try to solve problems. So like neversinks might just never have existed if there was like a shitty version of your own filter. I think it's the reason why like it doesn't exist in Last Epoch, right? Like as well.
Well, but there are plenty of like aren't there filter tools on Last Epoch tools?
There's like ways to like create filters out of like the gear that you're using. Maybe I haven't like looked into it enough. Like, and I do apologize. Like maybe there's like some Last Epoch guy in the chat that's like, actually you can do it. Like,
but
maybe,
my
like,
thing.
Yeah. There might be like I know there's like World Canvas, which basically like looks at your Last Epoch planner and then looks at the stats on them and then creates a filter out of that automatically. Yeah. But it's not very good. Like it still doesn't specify what bases you want the affixes on and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't know like that there like as far as I know, there isn't exactly like something like Filter Blade. But yeah.
I guess that's fair. I'm not sure I would 100% agree that it wouldn't exist if there had been a rudimentary item filter. I'm trying to come up with an example, but there's definitely things that you can already do in game that are better done outside, but where the better third-party solution doesn't invalidate the in-game solution. I guess like
I can think
if there was, just one sentence. The glossary, like the encyclopedia, looking up the words. I'm sure that isn't as extensive as looking up the Last Epoch wiki, but is the Last Epoch wiki invalidated by the in-game information? No, right? Or vice versa. Like it's still usable to have basic information to how things work in the game. In the same way, I think a basic editor for item filters that just lets you point and click and change one rule real quick wouldn't invalidate the existence of Filter Blade. But what did you want to say, Balor?
Oh no, I'm good. I was replying in chat.
You seemed so eager to say something. Okay, never mind.
Bro's having a 3D conversation.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and like at the same time, it's all like hypothetical speculation, like it's,
Well, it's based in we've observed. Let's go back to the beginning. But we had Steam charts for Last Epoch above 230,000 concurrent players, and this is only like the first weekend after launch, right? This is without any like future expansions, additions, cycles, and hype that may or may not exist. But there's a good shot that it will still be bigger in the future. And, some people expected it to be bigger yet. Like, Balor, you said like it could be up to 500,000, seeing that there's been 1 million copies sold.
I was expecting 300,000 concurrent. So it's still a little below where I thought it would be.
Is so much.
But yeah, like how can a game that is like so small and so niche and coming pretty much out of nowhere, because it was relatively niche for the longest time, beat the all-time concurrent player record for Path of Exile on Steam like so significantly? And I know, before you guys pointed out, Path of Exile also has players outside of Steam, right? We also have the standalone client. They also have PS5, they have PS4, they have Xbox, and so on. But still, it is insanely impressive. And that's basically why I'm like asking these questions. Is like I'm thinking there must be something that they did well to have this amount of mass appeal that where the PoE developers can learn from.
it's just timing where everybody's desperate for more ARPGs, especially with like Diablo being, from at least our point of view, a failure. Like, it's definitely not a failure. It's hugely successful, but it's not really aimed at us, right? So from like our circles, Diablo feels like a failure.
I mean, I think it's a failure in all aspects. Like, even for the devs, I'm pretty sure.
But that means at least like, but everyone's desperate for more ARPGs. Like, I love PoE, but I don't want PoE to be like the only option for me. Like, I want to be excited every time a D4 season launches. I wish I was as excited about D4 launches as I am about PoE launches. Like, I want it to be good. It just isn't. Ellie has the potential to be that good. So we're all excited.
Like, definitely. And that's the thing about Ellie. It's that the game is good, first and foremost. And on top of that, it's like, it's fair. You buy it, you play it, right? And sure, there's MTX or whatever, but I think people just want, first of all, a good game. Secondly, a fair game, and it provides both of those things. Like, it's people are just desperate for good games. Like, you just see every game popping off these days that is not like garbage, right?
Yeah.
Like, even like Pal World, for example, it's not like complete garbage, therefore it's successful. Like, people just want good games, man.
Another good example is Helldivers 2, where even though there's monetization things that I guarantee if it was in D4, Blizzard would be roasted left, right, and center for, people don't care because they're like, yeah, but game fun. Me play.
Game fun.
I don't necessarily know what those monetization things are, but I don't necessarily feel like people go too hard on Blizzard because it's Blizzard. People go hard on Blizzard because they have time and time again failed both their fan base and also external people, like, because they fail to provide for their fans and abandon their fans, but in trying to pander for the people that they're, like, external, like, more like, I don't know, I don't want to be like they're like derogatory or whatever, but like normies, right? Like, trying to pander to them, they also don't enjoy it because they're in a middle ground of like, they can't please anybody, which actually, like, WoW does pretty well because they just pander to the top 10%, and those guys are having a blast, right? Which is funny because like they managed to get it right in one game but fail so miserably in another game. Of course, Diablo, like WoW, has its own issues.
Yeah. So that reminds me of two things. So one, to explain Helldivers 2, there's a war bond, which is basically the battle pass. And one of the things on it is guns. So the guns aren't explicitly better or worse, but it would be like, oh, you can get a different legendary item in Diablo that works slightly differently, has slightly different numbers, where it gets very dangerously close to that pay to win. But because people feel like, oh, but I'm earning in-game currency by playing, oh, the war bond isn't bad, the game's good, the devs deserve the money, but no one cares right now. And they probably won't care unless it gets truly egregious. In terms of WoW, I think where Blizzard succeeded is they built up top-end content with rating, but then content for everyone else with things like factions and just going around and doing like normal /LFR, doing PvP, participating in those, what was it called? Big open area PvP things. Like, there's stuff for you to do every day in WoW, whereas in D4, you log in and you're like, okay, but what do I do?
Yeah, fair enough. But don't you also feel like the reason why people are okay with the monetization in Helldivers is because the industry has normalized people to accept that kind of stuff? Like, if like Call of Duty never did that before, or that sort of stuff, people would be like, yo, this is messed up, right?
Maybe, but maybe not, because people have also been a lot more accepting of monetization practices when it's tied to the game and when like they're enjoying it. Where, I mean, a good example of this is when Genshin Impact came out. It got dragged way less than Diablo Immortal, despite having the same monetization, because they're like, yes, we are a gacha game. This is what we do. Diablo Immortal was like, no, guys, don't worry. It's not pay to win. You don't buy items. You just buy things for your items.
They were honest about it. That's what's important.
Yeah. Helpful hint. Don't lie to people. It'll go way better.
And Helldivers, they're honest.
Like, the Genshin Impact was literally marketed at like weeb gacha enjoyers, so of course they're gonna be like, "Yo, I'm gonna like spend $1,000 rolling my waifu because that's what they enjoy, right?" Like, which like each to their own, I suppose.
That's what you want to do, sure.
Yeah, but like Diablo was marketed as like, it's like, yo, it's a Diablo game. It's got the lore, it's got the visceral combat, and then it's like, but you can't buy gear.
Yeah,
it was like the most dishonest like presentation / marketing campaign I've ever seen in like any game ever, right?
Cyberpunk's campaign might have beaten it.
Yeah, that's true.
That Cyberpunk hype was so huge, and I was like, hey, when all that hype died down.
Oh, I did. I just think their marketing campaign was extremely disingenuous. For example, they gave people review copies and would not allow them to show gameplay from their review copy.
Yeah.
I thought Cyberpunk was good as a game. Their reviewing practices and marketing were extremely dishonest.
Yeah. I never watched any of that. I just played the game and was like, yo, this is good.
But you didn't play it on release, though, did you?
No.
I did. It was pretty good on release, even. I might have gotten lucky because I was playing on PC, but on release, I enjoyed it.
But it was probably overhyped, right? You liked it because you knew what you were getting, but I feel like a lot of people didn't get out of it what they were expecting.
Maybe.
I don't know. That's what I remember. I haven't played it myself. Maybe that's something I should be doing.
Yeah. But I also do feel like the success of Last Epoch is tied to the fact that like they are very so they've created a very healthy network of like content creators which are like very excited and happy about the game. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like they're very like communicative with the content creators. We have a Discord, they talk to us, we get to like give feedback, we're excited about the game, we like the game, we play the game. Like, it's I think that plays a big part as well. But of course the most important part is that the game is good, because otherwise we wouldn't be here in the first place, right? Like, that's the thing. But then we start getting into like a discussion of like what makes a good game, which can be like, you probably talk about for days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just interesting to speculate like what factors probably could account for the big success that they have, but it's just everything coming together. Yeah, it's not just the time and date of the release, and also dropping it in this exact hole between the Path of Exile leagues, and where there's this sense of disappointment with what is currently offered in the ARPG market.
Yeah. As far as I know, EHG is also like co-owned by Tencent, correctly?
I believe so, yes.
So, like, I would assume that Path of Exile and Last Epoch are never really gonna be like competing because of that, or is that like just like completely
irrelevant?
Even before the Tencent acquisition of, I think, either company, very early, maybe Tencent had already bought PoE. Either way, doesn't matter. The devs had said that they didn't want to overlap with PoE leagues. So even very early on, they're like, no, we're going to be the game that you have time to play because it's not coming when PoE is launching Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's good. I want the games to coexist for sure. I want to play both. And I just hate seeing like like Torchlight Infinite being released like a day after, or Diablo being released a day after. It's like it feels like very scummy to me as well.
And then I was like, but it's launching like right here. And I'm like, man, I want to play it.
Yes, I couldn't play the season launch because it was too close to PoE, and now I can't play the preseason because it's close to Last Epoch. It's like, I know it's hard to find like good scheduling, but it almost feels deliberate.
Yeah, it felt like they aimed for the worst time.
Yeah.
it's kind of like, oh man, like
it's rough. I want them to have just one good launch timing wise. Like, imagine if maybe it was, I don't know, March 14th, and PoE comes in at, let's just say, March, I don't know, 30th, and like, imagine if Torchlight launched there with an event.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, how do you think is it gonna slot in the future when PoE 2 is out and everything? I mean, it's gonna get a lot more crowded in our, let's say, 3 to 4 monthly release schedule.
Yeah. I mean,
how much do you expect yourself to be playing this game in the future? But yeah, surely.
Okay, as long as it slots. So imagine you have like 3 months. I don't even know what they're gonna do, whether they're gonna do 3 months or 4 months, but 1.5 months of PoE 2, and then half a month of PoE 1, and then I would easily do like half a month of Last Epoch if it slots in around like half a month after PoE 1 League, if that makes sense. I would even play longer than that, like, to be honest. But
my dream is 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be great.
1.5 months, half a month. Yeah, exactly.
I could actually see it going in a different direction, where instead of playing every time, you play based on what has good content, especially if there's even more games coming into the space. Where maybe you don't play every PoE 1 league. You go, oh, you know, it's a repeat of, I don't know, what was a league that I really didn't like? Heist. You know, it's a repeat of Heist, where I just didn't like the mechanic much. And I say, all right, I'll go play Last Epoch this time, because Last Epoch looks cool. Don't like this mechanic. I'll come back next time. And people get to rotate between more games.
Sure, but you could also do that by saying like, oh, I'll just keep playing PoE 2 for a bit then.
Yeah.
Until like, yeah, whatever else happens. I would still rather have them not overlap like ever. That's just like selfish, right? Because also like PoE are not very consistent with their schedule. So imagine being a dev and it's like, okay, we're releasing now, and then PoE is actually like, oh yeah, guys, we're actually like postponing by
2 weeks later.
Everything just goes to shit.
So it's gonna be like 3 days apart now.
Yeah. I don't know if they have like internal channels to like figure this stuff out. I'm sure they do. Like, come on, there must be like internal web dev channels, like Discords, like, you know, just hook up, ask them, like, be like, yo, Mr. Chris, where can we slot in?
It was a space.
Yeah. Like, I think both PoE and LE benefit of each other existing, right?
Yes.
It's not the case where like one cannibalizes the other unless they overlap. Then obviously they would cannibalize each other.
Yeah, and I do think there's a chance that infrequently they will overlap just because one gets delayed or something like that. But as long as it doesn't happen most of the time, I think it's fine.
Yeah. Exactly.
Do you expect the games, I mean, if you want to finish the thought, please go for it. I'm sort of switching the topic a little bit.
Nah, you're good.
I wanted to ask whether you expect the games to further diverge or like converge a little bit, because in many places, LE seems to make a conscious effort to be different from Path of Exile, whether it's to its benefit or its detriment, but they're like trying to do things differently and provide interesting, different mechanics and pathways to how things are done. Wait, do you expect like Path of Exile taking a page from Last Epoch's book, Last Epoch taking a page from Path of Exile's book, or do you expect them to further like try to stray away from each other to do exactly that the other game doesn't provide?
All of the above.
It'll be both for sure.
Yeah. I mean, why would you ever like be like, oh, PoE does something really well, I'm not gonna do that. Like why would you do that? Like, just implement the good things and then also like implement them in like your own unique way. And I think this game does that pretty well. As like TLI does that really well as well. Like, surprisingly, like. But yeah, it's like, why would you try to reinvent the wheel every time? There's literally zero reason to ever do that. I think like copy the good things and then add your own cool things. And if PoEs then like, yo, their cool things are also things that we might want to have, then they can do that, but in their own way. I think things will never feel the same just because of how different the games are. Like, how different you play them. They're just so different, honestly.
Yeah, you can't just take System A from PoE and take it into Last Epoch because everything around it does work differently and is intertwined in a different way.
Like if they were to add Val orbs into this game, it would work completely different to PoE because it's like, first you'd have to do your legendary potential, and then what happens to the implicit, like stuff like that. It's like there's so many variables essentially that would make them feel different.
That said, is there like a specific thing that you'd like to see Path of Exile take away from this Last Epoch 1.0 launch?
Better controller support.
Wait, is LE controller support already better than PoE?
Yeah, PoE doesn't have any.
Mm-hmm. What?
Okay,
PoE has official controller
technically
support.
has official controller support.
I played it on controller the other day.
But what you have to do to play on a controller is select that you want to play a controller and reboot the entire thing. You get a scuffed shit UI because it's for the controller setup, and you can't use a keyboard and mouse for anything without rebooting the client again. That's the same as not having controller support. No one wants to do their respecking or their crafting or their inventory management with a controller.
True. Yeah.
Like it just doesn't. No one wants that.
I think this game does MF really well. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
No, it's fine. So I think there's a couple things that I would very much like PoE to steal. I also think there's a couple things I'd like LE to steal. First one and biggest one is I think more progression should be account bound rather than character bound, because having to restart your monos feels so bad for a second character when it's like, yeah, but all of my gear is awesome. I could step into 500 corruption right now and be fine, but I have to spend hours building up through this boring trivial content that doesn't give me upgrades, doesn't provide a challenge. It's just pointless busy work because I don't know why. I don't actually know the reason. The reason in the past was because you couldn't reset it, but you can reset it now. And for the opposite,
I don't think I'd want that to be account bound. I would like a much quicker catch-up system for alts to be able to catch up, but I don't think I'd want it to be like account-wide.
I mean, at least let it go straight to empowered, right? The progression feels good the first time you go through it.
Yeah,
you're like, yo, cool, but then like having to regrind your blessings again on a new character, which is like way too strong for that stuff already. Like that does not feel good. I agree with Tenki there.
I think I would like it if I could like immediately start at the level 90 ones at the end and just unlock empowered, because that's also very quick if you were already there, but it still feels like progression to me, whereas the rest of getting to the 90s to do that all feels like a waste on an alt.
Okay, but imagine this. You're wearing full legendaries every slot, and you step into monoliths. Your character can blast 1,000 corruption, and you have to do normal monoliths now.
Yeah, so I would like to be able to skip to the 90 ones just to unlock empowered. And I also I feel like I should be able to use the catch-up mechanic they've already got, but on my alts, where you can just like jump into one and, if you're at 500, you'll do your first reset and be like, oh, I'm at 350 or 400 already. Like the catch-up mechanic they already have, just make that account-wide, and then you're good.
Yeah.
Right?
You have the catch-up mechanic and remove the non-empowered monos.
Yeah. I wouldn't want the whole thing to be account-wide. Like, I still want to have to farm my new blessings on a new character, but I want to do that in empowereds to begin with. Because, like, all my characters aren't going to want the same blessings. Like, it's not...
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Like, I still want to go farm my blessings. Those are basically... They feel like gear items to me. Like, they're individual... the really, really strong affixes. They're like items. I don't want the same one on every character. The catch-up mechanic they already have is good. Just make that account wide and make it so that when I get to end game or whatever, when I get a new character, I can just do those 3 level 90 ones and not all of the progression to get there. Do those 3 level 90 ones, boom, I'm in empowereds. Do one run, I've caught up. Great.
I just had an idea. So what about instead of having to farm for new blessings, as you defeat bosses and as you push, you get some sort of rare drop that lets you save a blessing. And then you could apply it either to your current character or any future character. So then you've already put in some of the time, and you won't necessarily have everything you want, but it won't feel as bad because you'll have at least a baseline.
I really like I don't know. I really like the progression. I don't know if I'd want to skip that as well. Maybe. Feels slightly extra. Like I just don't need it.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's interesting to hear you guys on that. I don't think I've had, since they added the monolith endgame, I don't think I've had 2 characters in endgame in the same cycle without like resetting or like starting in a different league. So I'll pass on that. But I definitely keep it in mind when I play my second character into the endgame and see whether I feel the same, whether I'd want to skip it or whether I like it.
The reason I push back a little bit. The reason I push back a little bit there is because I don't do that. I don't prepare full characters in my inventory, in my stash, and then make a new character. That's not something I ever do. So I don't want it to instantly be at the same progression, because I will just wake up one day and be like, I want to make a new character, and I will just make a new character with 0 prep, and I'll just start.
But you'll still bypass a lot of the power curve by
because I'm going to have
virtue of having items.
I'm going to have some stuff, and I'm going to have, the ability to crop, but I'm never making a character and being like, haha, I've got all these legendaries and I've got the things sorted out. And I know what my past, that never happens to me. I never do that.
Okay. So let's say you had to start from red maps in PoE.
Yeah.
You had to go through all of your Atlas and stuff, get all of your Atlas passives again. How would you feel about that?
I mean, I don't want to do that, but also I don't want to be forced into tier 16 maps at the same time, because I quite often make characters in PoE that are not ready for tier 6. I don't have the gear for that. I didn't prep in my stash tab. I know both of you do that. You'll be like, yo, I've got this disgusting character put together, and you'll like make it to level 70 and just slap everything on and be a god. I never do that. I just go, I usually don't even have a path to building. I usually have an idea in my head of what I want to do, and like a rough skeleton built in my head of the tree, and no prep done, no gear, no nothing. So when I get there, I usually end up pulling out watchstones and like favoriting a tier 3 map and running like 30 of those, and then putting in 1 stone and running a bunch of yellows, and like seeing the progression of that character. Because that's the fun for me, is the progression of the character, where it's weak, finding out where its weak points are. When does it feel shit? How do I overcome that? Rather than just jumping to the endgame version. I never jump to the endgame version. And so the one thing I never want is to be forced into, be like, oh, everything is shared. You're already here. Congratulations, you're at 500 corruption. Or congratulations, you're at tier 16 maps and you can never go down. I don't want that.
But you can.
I'm not ready for that.
No, but you can go down. You can reset your corruption.
I mean, yeah, but...
So basically, you're saying you don't want the ability to go into those T16 maps. You have to re-earn your void stones.
So I want catch-up mechanics. I like that. In PoE, it's fine because I can just pull out void stones, right? And that's fine. Yeah. But I wouldn't want all of my endgame stuff in this game to be shared. But I would want big catch-up mechanics to make it progress much quicker on my old, like super quicker. Like not having to do normal monoliths would be great, and then just the catch-up mechanic that already exists is great. Like just that account wide, and we'd be fine. Because that would make your progressing to higher corruptions very, very quick, if you wanted it to be.
Wouldn't you rather always just have the choice, right? Or do you feel like having choices kind of makes people like...
Choice feels like an illusion to me when there's a clearer choice, right? Like,
yeah, I mean that's always the case though, but at the same time, like with choice, we both can coexist.
I have a question. You said you can reset your corruption, right? So you can set it from whatever way you're at. Let's say 500. You can get it back to 0, or how does it exactly work?
Yes,
get back to 100 base. 100.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a hard reset.
The easier way would just be put a slider. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let me just Choose what corruption.
Well, my
below
question
what
is, if
my
I have a
highest is.
character, right, that is at, say, 500 corruption, and it's doing well there, and I want to continue it in 2 weeks, but I want to make a new character now. That new character gets to endgame. Can I then reset from 500 corruption? But then when I go back to my character A, then I can't get back into 500 corruption without playing there again.
Now, hang on. A slider's a little bit interesting. That reset node, why does it have to be 100? Like that could unlock. That could unlock, like, I don't know. In my mind, I would do like 80% of the maximum you'd ever done, and you would just have like a thing, and you could just be like, reset to here, please. This character can only do 200. Oh, I got good gear. Now I can do 400. I can jump up, but 500 is the most I've ever done, so I can only jump up to like 575 or something, and then okay, cool. Like,
yeah, I'm a choice addict, right? So the ideal world for me would be like a global corruption system and just a slider. That's it.
A slider would be
why do I have to regrind why is there a catch up? Why is there all that, bro? Just give me give me the ability to grind one monolith if I want to. And then if I ever want to change to like a different one, I could just be like, let's try it at 300. Okay, that's fine. Go 400. Or like, let's go to the peak and start pushing again. Because that's what Delve is, right? And that's a good system. You could always go back to where you've grinded and be like, let's go sideways here because this character can't handle it, but my other character can handle 900, so it's fine. When I go back to my other character, I can always jump back in from where I left off, right?
Yeah. I like the idea of that reset just being like up to like real close to where you've been. Probably not literally exactly. Like I'd want to be starting, if I was at like 600, I'd want that slider to reset to like maybe like 550, 560, something around there. Like just right below my maximum.
Because the other thing is your ability to push corruption actually scales inversely with your corruption in terms of the speed. Like if your character can handle it, if you're at 500, going from 500 to 1,000 is faster than 1 to 500. And so the game kind of double punishes you when you re-roll and pre-assemble a character because you are stuck slowly grinding content that is trivial for you. What slows your corruption down at higher levels is actually the fact that you just die and lose progress.
You can't do it.
Yeah. But if you never die and you never lose progress, it's actually much faster to go from, say, 500 to 1,000 than 100 to 500.
Yo, I want a slider now. That sounds actually great. I want the slider thing.
Yeah.
That solves both problems that we have at the same time.
Exactly.
Instead of solving my problem or solving your problem, it's nope, there's everyone's problem solved. Let's do that.
And like PoE, which is the game about weight and like everything having weight, the slider there is you could just put a T3 map in, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could do that. There's a slider in Delve. You could go whatever depth you want. Mind you, it took them a while to make Delve account bound, so but eventually they came down to it. So like, props to them for that.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said? It took a while to make what?
Well, Delve used to not be account bound. So.
Right, true. It used to be character.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, you could argue that at first they didn't have that, but eventually they learned and they fixed it. So that's cool. So I mean, like, if GGG, the company that is obsessed with weight and having everything matter, is like, is lenient enough to implement a system where we have a choice to be able to measure, like, where our character strengths are and how, and like what we want to take on, then I'm sure EHG could do the same for us, right?
Well, it's a matter of like how much other content is there to keep you busy. I suppose that with Delve, it was also the matter of like, why would you restrict people like that and make it character bound when there's just not enough time to do all these things during a 3-month league? Might as well share it between the characters, and then people can pick which Delve they want to delve at and spend their time.
That gets interesting, actually. Is time spent actually a positive? Or is it better to let people spend the time they're going to doing the thing they enjoy most? Now, obviously, I know this can be taken to an extreme of like, oh, but I want to have an item printer. Taking the extreme out, would it be better, since some people like to push one character really far and other people like to push alts, to let the people who enjoy the alts, even if it means they burn through content much faster on those characters, use an account-bound system and keep re-rolling.
Yeah, more choice is always better.
I think it loses a little bit of excitement for me if I can jump 100% to where I am. Like if I'm at like 1,000 corruption and my new alt can just be at 1,000 corruption, I lose some excitement because I'm already at my maximum.
As well.
But it's only if I'm at my maximum. Like if I'm at 1,000 and I make an alt and I can just start at like 850, 900 and be like, okay, now I can push. Now I feel good again.
You're like, what the fuck? My ult's so much better than my other guy. Now I can push even further. That's cool.
Yeah, I've done that before. I've farmed on a build, and then I rerolled to something else, and my old build, maybe the damage was bad in T16s, but it's fine because I did, Essence Beast. I made 200 Divines. My 200 Divine second build should not be restricted to the tier 1 maps where I was Essence Beast farming, because I can now smash tier 16, smash Uber bosses. And like, I have the character power. I earned it through gameplay. Let me test it.
Yeah.
Because I think I would agree with you, Paller, if the system wasn't like endless, right? Because at the end of the day, the system is endless, and you can just keep going beyond your maximum, and you can always like you can see like both your progress, as like if you're making your own builds, it's like my new build is so much better than my old build, but also your itemization and stuff, and that's essentially what keeps us playing, right? Is like your character getting stronger and being able to do harder things and get more loot from them.
Yeah,
feeds in really well into the gameplay loop, I think. But yeah, I mean, like the current system is just excessively punishing people who like to reroll. And I know a lot of people that like are build creators in this game, which are not necessarily content creators, because there is a lot of people who just like play this game, make crazy builds. Like some of them just don't bother doing the cycles, because why would you do that? You already have your classes that you want to theorycraft for at like 2,500 corruption, and like you have to regrind all of that shit on every class so that you can like theorycraft them at high corruption again. Like it's like, man, it's like it's just too much, I feel. Like it's fine to do that once per season, but then to have to redo that every time once per alt, I think that's, yeah. Like if PoE forced you into league starting every time you made a new character, I think
I'd make far less characters.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd make a lot less.
Time to do my Atlas again. It's like, holy shit. Like doing that once per league is fun, but the second time it's like
I already do it 2 or 3 times a league because I usually privately,
like,
and I'll do like a solo self-found run, and
it's
but
never
I
as
wouldn't
fun
want to do it for every character. Every character would be miserable.
Yep, and that's what it is right now, which I'm not a fan of.
No, that's fair, but I also think it's just the sense of, there's not that much to do right now, so they're just doing that, and in the future, they're probably allowing people to bypass that a lot more because there's going to be more activities that they can engage in next to that. I feel like that in PoE that also went sort of in relationship with each other, right? Like the game became more expensive, there's more and more content, and then they also allowed you to bypass some content or to account share things that previously were character shared. But yeah.
To an extent, maybe, but I don't think that's the reason why. Because, yes, players will always want to skip the boring parts and get to the fun parts. And there's always going to be a boring part. But I also don't think it's ever a good move from a developer to say, all right, well, because our game doesn't have content, we're going to restrict your ability to progress, because players feel that immediately. And that is one of the big things that turns people off of games where they're like, yeah, but I feel like this system exists just to punish me. I think the dev just wants me to be here so their engagement numbers for their shareholders are higher. I'm going to go play some other game that's actually fun.
Well, came out from the other side. I mean, I'm not necessarily thinking that developers are trying to make things especially tedious in the game just because they have enough content. We need to stretch it out. But in the other way around, like where you get to a point where the game has so much content that you can't do it all during one cycle, league, or whatever iteration, that at that point you're like, well, we might as well allow people to bypass a little bit here, a little bit there, cut some corners, because there's so much in the game to do anyway. But yeah, I'm not in favor of artificially stretching out content, if that's what you mean. I'm just trying to say, as there's more content to do, it becomes more reasonable to allow people to bypass things.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few examples of artificially stretching, like the battle pass system for Overwatch 2 or New World. After it came out, people progressed too fast, and they're like, we're going to nerf all the loot by a lot, so you progress much slower. Yeah, it did not go well.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be detrimental, because people will just get fatigued, right? I get fatigued.
I do too.
Like after my second or third character, I'm like, I don't want to go through that shit again. like honestly,
Yep.
And I have to put this game down for like quite a while until I'm like cool to come back, because it's like league starting 4 times within like 1 month. It's like, that is my like biggest annoyance, honestly, with the game right now.
Same.
Okay, I can't wait to experience it firsthand. Whether I'll share your frustration.
Yeah,
directly
I mean,
when I'm
it only
level
starts
by
being
second
really
character.
frustrating after like the 4th, 5th year.
I might change my opinions once I start making alts, because in other iterations of the beta, I've only ever played like 2 characters, so I've only really done it twice, like per time I've come back, with quite a few months in between, because I've only like rejoined on major patches, not like things, and then I've played like 2 characters and leave. So it's never really bothered me too much. But I'm really enjoying this, and I've already got like 4 new ideas. So like, and already. So I don't know. I wonder if in a few weeks' time I'm like, you know what? Actually, I changed my mind. I want what they wanted. That can absolutely happen.
Yeah, it's especially bad once you start pushing corruption, because it takes a fair amount of time, even on a powerful character. And then if you push it in multiple timelines, well, none of that transfers. And so if you get to like 2,000 corruption because your build's really good, imagine, again, delve in PoE. You get to 1,000 or 2,000, and then you have to redo the entire thing on your next character, which is even worse. And this is more of a content creator thing, but people expect you to showcase the builds in the high-end content. And so then you'll get some people who will not take your content seriously unless you showcase 2,000 corruption, but don't understand that's simply not fun when you have to restart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that again goes back to like the theory crafters, since they don't want to regrind all the way up to there, and they do want to like actually test their build against the hardest content, then they just don't play cycles. I know a lot of people that like are giga theory crafters in this game that just do that, right? Like they just don't play cycles because like, I grinded all my classes and my corruptions up to this point. I don't want to like do that again.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I mean, that's again something that will just change when there's actual cycle themes and when they're doing interesting stuff with new features, new mechanics, and stuff that you don't want to miss out on, and that you can't join in on unless you make a new character in that specific cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which in some ways I think makes it worse, though, because then you feel pressured to do a thing you don't enjoy to get the cool new stuff.
I mean, if they don't fix the problem, then it might create fatigue amongst certain types of players, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Involving yourself in the league or choosing not to and missing out is like, that's pretty standard for RPGs. So some sort of catch up and we're good. Honestly, even half of what you guys suggested, just something is fine. Just give me something to make it much quicker for alts. they're already okay with all the like campaign skipping for alts and shit.
Yeah,
which
they
is
built them in.
right.
Campaign's
Yeah.
fine. It's good.
Yeah, like that's fantastic. That's something I think PoE struggles with is they want all of my characters to struggle. Whereas and people are like, I want campaign skips. And I'm like, I never want a campaign skip on my first character of the league. You should make me struggle through all the progression on my first character. But there's no reason that all my alts have to struggle. That's they can zoom. Like,
yeah. To go back to a previous topic of something you'd like to see PoE borrow, campaign skips built into the game, where it's not an artificial thing of, you press a button and you're just a magical level. No, it's you do something in the game as you're progressing, which if you have enough power and gear that requires you to have already gone through the end game in some way to earn that, lets you skip parts of the campaign.
Yeah.
I think it's clever.
I find they've done that in a really neat way.
If you told Jonathan that, he would just be like, yeah, you do that by putting on twin gear. Which, like, I could see that, but it's also, like, it's cool just to know that, like, yeah. But the system that you do mention is actually, like, abused even on League Start, right? So,
yeah, I do think that's a little bit of a oversight. I don't think...
Like, I've never done that, because I just always skip it, even on first character.
Yeah, I think that's an oversight. I think your first character should still have to go through campaigns.
Yeah.
Wait, how does it work? You can access the alternative leveling pass without having been an endgame or what?
So once you get your mastery, you can go into monoliths.
Mm-hmm.
And then, assuming your build can kill stuff and survive, you will level up in monoliths. You get a key, and then you can backtrack and use the key to skip. And so you need the entrance to a temporal sanctum, and you need the end of time, and you can basically skip the entire rest of a campaign.
But on the flip side, I think if that wasn't the case on a League Start, Last Epoch campaign is like actually longer than PoE's campaign if you have to run 1 to 9.
Maybe I'm just slow, but it wasn't for me.
What I don't mind is being able to do monoliths without finishing the campaign. What I do mind on the League Start is being able to skip through the campaign, skip a large section of it, and still get all the extra passives and idols unlocked on your League Start. So if in my brain, I would fix that by just making sure that the entrance to every dungeon that we use for the skips, that visiting it is part of the campaign, and the keys can't be unlocked until you've visited that dungeon once on your account per season. Like they just won't drop on the floor until you've gotten to the door.
That wouldn't really change. No, that wouldn't really change the skip. Because
why not?
No, because you only need to go to the entrance of a temporal sanctum to skip everything else, and that's very early on.
Right.
That's
okay.
how you do the skip.
Not exactly what I said. Instead, like wherever it skips you to would be like you have to progress to there once to be able to use the skip in the future.
But you know what the problem is? That like in Last Epoch, you don't even have to ever finish the campaign, even without the skips. So like the meta would just end up being like, you get up to the ice zone before going to the Lagon zone, and then that's it. You would just never go for your final attribute.
Mm-hmm.
On most builds, at least, like that are not attribute stacking. You're just like, I don't care.
I mean, that sort of feels okay. If anything, it's just that whatever the final boss is right now doesn't have its like a reward that makes it worth doing, and it probably should. That's all.
I mean, the reward is good, but not good enough for lazy people to stop being lazy. AKA me.
Same.
You know, it's like it's a good reward. Like it gives you like 5 attributes. It's pretty good.
What if just like PoE, it also gave you 2 passive points? You would go back and do that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Nope. You'd still skip because passive points are shared between all side quests.
Right.
But if it gave you 2 on top of that.
If it gave you 2 on top of that wasn't part of that thing.
Yeah.
You finished the campaign, there's 2 that doesn't count as part of the thing. You would
I mean, then I would hate the campaign.
You wouldn't necessarily always do it right away, but you would always end up back there to finish it.
But I think like going back to the campaign when you're like just one tapping everything, it's like it just feels like a chore. It's like
See, I don't mind that. That felt alright to me.
If anything, I think it should give something that's much more beneficial immediately. Like if you defeat Majasa, I don't know, maybe it gives you 3,000 faction rep, which won't matter if you're coming back to it, way later. But early on will make a significant difference.
Same idea, but something immediately valuable, but less valuable in the end game.
Yeah, that's true actually. So like that's interesting, yeah. Because then you could have actual farming or economical advantage. Like it's almost like both choices are not wrong. Like, do you know what I mean? I think that's actually that's
probably all right. Like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why game dev is hard, man, because like coming to these implementing something like that is difficult. But I think that's what makes a good game, right? Where you don't ever feel punished because something exists or whatever, and you're able to I don't know how to articulate this properly.
You feel like
your homework is never fun.
Yeah. You feel like you have meaningful choices, and every choice you make leads to a reward rather than choices that you're making to avoid punishments.
Yeah.
And a good example of this is a lot of loot stuff in PoE. I mean, how often do you read the downsides on your maps?
I have a regex does that for me.
Yeah. But outside of that, you regex out a couple
technically additional projectiles is supposed to be a downside. So we've been looking at it all league, but
yeah.
I think we can rule out this league. I don't think I've ever in the past sat there chaos spamming a map, spending 40 chaos on it to get a downside and then exalt slam it 4 times. I've never done that before.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue Nemesis and Beyond were downsides, but yeah, they obviously weren't.
No, not really true. Well, I think we did a great job providing tons of interesting feedback points to devs of all potential sides, whether they be involved in the LE launch, whether they be developing the other big game that we play, or any other ARPG. But one thing I want to ask a little bit as a closing round is, I think there's a ton of people looking to get into content creation with Last Epoch being a new game that comes out. And how do you approach creating content, and what advice do you have for aspiring creators?
Oh man,
is there anything that you would recommend if someone is looking to be like, hey, this is my moment, I want to be?
I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
Have less existential dread than I do. That'd be great.
Yeah, I absolutely have plenty of that.
Yeah. My advice would be, this is not your big moment. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon.
Yeah, that's true. The thing about the way that I create content is I make less. So I don't actually I'm a failure, man. I just stream and I feel very extremely anxious anytime I actually have to make a video about something.
Hi, we're the same person.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
So I just don't make videos in the end unless it's PoE, because I know things in PoE. I know.
Yeah, in PoE you can just press start recording and you just talk for 10 minutes.
I know that I should have made several LE videos by now because I'm a content creator. But I know there are people that know so much more than me, and they're the people that should be making content. And what if I get something wrong? The worst fear I have is if I put out videos with information that's wrong.
I mean,
and I'm afraid also of doing something that somebody else is doing. If I just put out a video for something, it's oh yeah, that's just the thing that everybody's doing.
Yeah,
it's
because I'm doing thorn totems, right? I didn't look up any build. I practiced this thing for 2 weeks. I did every variation I could think of. I decided on things I wanted the most. I still haven't made a Thorn Totems video because there are already Thorn Totems videos. They're different from mine. They are. I know they're different because now that I've decided what I'm doing, I've gone and looked at the other ones and been like, oh no, I like my decisions way more than I like this one. Like there's a version on max roll, and it's not wrong. It's just built with different priorities in mind. It's fine. It's just my priority was like smoothness of play, not raw damage or raw movement speed or raw whatever. And so it's just a different way, but I struggle to make a video on it because I'm like, but what if like I'm going to make this video and they're just going to be like, why aren't you doing all these things that the max roll thing does? Or why aren't you doing this guy's version? Or like, why is it better than, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I just got here.
Yeah,
just tell me what I'm doing.
So in terms of being wrong, I'd say at some point you have to accept that eventually you will get something wrong. Obviously, it shouldn't be every video or anything like that, and you should do your best to avoid it. But you also have to accept that, yes, eventually I'm going to get something wrong. A good example of this, I said for Circle of Fortune, you need to be rank 4 to unlock prophecies, because that's when I could access them. Turns out that was a bug. You can access them from level 1. You just had to relog, and I didn't know that. I thought, that's an intended gameplay mechanic. Yeah.
That would make sense. You wouldn't have been surprised, considering the...
Yeah. And so
locks on Merchant Guild, you'd be like, oh, you're level 4. That makes sense. Okay, sure.
Yep. And so I got that wrong. What I did is I put a pinned comment on the video. I also made sure to thank everyone who was pointing it out, because it's like, yeah, I made a good faith effort to test stuff, but turns out my testing was wrong. And in terms of like, because someone else already did it, the secret is I won't know if someone else did it. So it doesn't matter. I'll just be in my little bubble making things about what I want to talk about.
Yeah, I wish I could have that kind of like outlook on things, or maybe not like outlook, but like I agree with you, but I can't bring myself.
Yes, is it Tanky's 100% correct, but also that's a struggle.
Also, another perspective on that, there are people who will be like, okay, I've seen, the Woody video on this. I've seen the Lizard video on this. What's the Valor Mage opinion? What's the Tuna opinion? Where they don't see it as, oh, I can only watch one of the videos. Mm-hmm. They want to see all of the videos, or they want to specifically know your take on it. Well, it means sometimes people are like, yeah, but why did you do that differently? Isn't this other one better? Yeah. And in general, I just ignore those because those kind of comparisons don't get anywhere productive. If someone asks,
but in some situations, they are better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, if, for example, if like Lizard comes to a decision that this is the node that he chose, and I choose something different, I would say that most of the time Lizard is probably right because he has 15,000 hours and I have 1,000.
Yeah. But I might still prefer the way it plays with my choice, even if it's inferior. And for the content I'm doing, it might be good enough.
Which is exactly what I've done.
In some cases, it might be due to ignorance. Like in the sense that like I just wouldn't know, right?
Yeah.
I just don't know.
That's why before doing big stuff, I tend to ask people who do know. Like when I made my starter recommendations, I straight up asked Tarek because I was like, you know this way better than me. And originally, I wasn't going to recommend Thorn Totem Shaman. He was like, no, it's really smooth. It's really good. So I put it in the video.
Oh, yeah, it is.
True.
Yeah, it makes sense. No, I really feel what you just said, Balor. There's this feeling of like, hey, I'm just this casual LE player, and maybe I know some things in other games, but here there's other big boys, and like, what is my purpose of making a video? So that's a real tough mental exercise to go through, because just like in real life, there's many situations in real life also where you technically know that this is the correct way to approach something, and like this is how I should be handling it and how I should be looking at it from my point of view in my head. But it's not actually like what you do, like how you intuitively deal with it, and you kind of have to get those things together.
I also think everyone is always entitled to speak from their experiences. So you can say, this might not be the best Thorn Totem Shaman builder. You don't even have to say that. You can just say, this is my experience playing Thorn Totem Shaman.
Yeah. Making more opinion pieces allows for more freedom in that regard. So maybe that's what you can take away from this conversation, going back to what Catmaster said, like advice that we'd have from people is like, I think people care to know what your experiences with the game are, and just put your opinion out there. You don't have to make like technical content just yet until you've maybe figured things out more, if you've done your research. And maybe just like talk about like, your experiences, what you feel about the game.
Yeah, sort of like a build diary.
like opinion pieces. I think the game's really good. It's just nice to see it pop off. Really shame the server issues, man. Like if the server issues were not there, like it would be very nice.
I'm very sure we would have hit the 300 to 350,000 mark that I was saying we were going to hit the other week if there were no server issues. If there were nothing, if everything was smooth, I think it would have hit my numbers, no problem.
I don't think so. I think we would have today, but I don't think we would have on launch day because it's still the middle of a week.
Maybe.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still going to peak today, regardless of the issues, right? And it's really great that they did pick the Wednesday so that they had plenty of time to sort out issues that they didn't foresee. It's just unfortunate that there were so many issues that they didn't foresee.
Yeah, it ended up not just oh man.
Because someone linked me that like super confident post that they did pre-launch where someone asked on the Reddit, are we actually going to be able to play on launch? And they had like 3 paragraphs about how well prepared they are for launch. And
someone linked me a post, a forum news post from PoE that was about 8.5, 9 years old that read almost exactly the same. Like, hey, we've sorted these out. With this next launch is going to be smooth, and then the launch was. I remember smooth.
That one.
And they learned that one of this was just 11th Hour Gaming's learning to. This is like a thing you just had to go through to learn not to make those promises because you can't.
No amount of confidence in game development is not overconfidence.
You can't know. And GGG learned that 8 or 9 years ago. And it's fine. You guys learned it today. It's fine. I
feel like they're learning it again every couple of months.
Yeah. And also, server stuff's hard because here's the thing. If you could easily solve it, then the biggest companies in the world already would have.
Yeah, there'd be no problems in massive, massive games if it was something that could be solved all the time.
Yeah, that stuff is complicated. I'm not even going to pretend to know or, that I know anything about it. But like, I do see a lot of people kind of like white knighting EHG. And I do feel like we should be like critical where like, it's like, like, it's like, yeah, they did like a terrible fucking job at that. Like they really did. But yeah, on the flip side, their game is good. So I really do hope that that the people that maybe are thinking about uninstalling or something like that would rather actually just either play offline, and if you don't want to do that, maybe refund now or like buy the game in like maybe a month or a week or something like that when the hype is that down, when they figure it out. Because like I feel like if you're like an ARPG enjoyer, like this is a good game. I feel like you're doing a disservice to yourself if like, you're cutting yourself out of like playing this because of the initial server issues / humps. But at the same time, if you are upset with EHG, I feel like it's justified and rightfully so, because you, as a consumer, you bought a product, you were promised online play. You're actually like, people use entitled as a slur these days, but you are entitled to what you purchased. Like you purchased it. So like if it doesn't work, then it's not your fault, right?
Don't let people it's absolutely understandable that people are frustrated, that people are like refunding the game or putting a negative opinion. What's not understandable and what's not okay, and it always feels so shabby to like even to have to say that, right? And people are gonna call me out in the chat again for virtue signaling, but it's not okay to let that whole thing devolve into personal attacks and shit talking the developers to the point where the team leader of 11th Hour Games says like, yeah, during these server stability problems, I'm going to tell my team to stay off the Discord because it's too toxic. Like,
yeah, of course. But that's just like your mama didn't raise you right type of shit. Like it's got nothing to do with
like actually.
Well, I think there aren't enough laws type shit that straight up some of the things people say should be illegal.
I suppose, but I mean, like the internet is like it's a completely different thing. But like allowing people to say what they want is important, IMO. But at the same time,
be a better human being, people.
Don't be a dick. Yeah. have some sort of like understanding. Be understanding, but like I understand people are jaded at this point. Like how many launches have you gone through where it's a complete shit show? So especially with like their confidence before it launched, like I get it. But yeah, harassment is never the way.
No, absolutely not. But like, I think I got one more sentiment here that I want to add that maybe is helpful to some people here, and that is always be aware of the absolute lack of detail that written communication has. Like written communication, I have to think of it as like a box, right? Like you can't precisely say what you want, but you're saying like a big square, and you could mean anything within that square. Like any point within that square could be what you really mean. Now, when you're using written communication, you're at home, in your shelter at home, and you write on the internet, you might say something really bad in that box, like, right? But you mean the least bad interpretation of that, right? You say like, you son of a bitch, what a shit show, absolute disaster of a launch or whatever, right? But then someone reading it may take away the possibly worst interpretation from that, like the worst insult, the worst hurt of feelings and whatever. And yeah, just always be aware. I think written communication is very, very easily misunderstood, which is why I think it's great that you guys took the time to come onto this not written conversation that we had here. Right. We've been doing this podcast for a long time, and it's always fun to end on a high note when there's still plenty of juices flowing. Is there something that you guys wanted to highlight, that you want to shout out? Anything that you want to drive attention to? What's the next piece of content that you're going to release that people can look forward to? Is there any big guide in the making, Tuna?
No. I mean, I'm obviously gonna be very busy with PoE when that's coming. But with LE, I mean, I want to give a shout out to EHG for being so cooperative with its content creators. Something I really wish GGG was a little bit more with us. But also, I definitely want to like praise certain things that I like about the game. Like I like the way that corruption works, the fact that like I can have a number that goes up that stimulates my 12 brain cells to keep grinding, and also the fact that like MF is tied to that, and like all these things. I like the game. I think it's good. I want it to be better, so keep improving on it. And thank you for being so nice to us content creators. It feels like for once I'm like part of something rather than just being like yeah, it's cool. But in regards to like, you probably won't see much content from me until PoE, and then we got PoE 2 coming. So yeah, gonna be very busy. Shout out to Maxroll as well for giving us a good platform to like write guides and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's basically my only shout out there.
No, it's a good shout out. Tons of good resources on Maxroll, I can confirm.
I'm gonna throw everybody for a loop. This only just occurred to me now. I think I like the way this game is doing Magic Find style stuff more than wearing quant items in PoE, which has always been the thing that I say I love the most.
That's exactly what I mean. Like, I think MF in PoE sucks, and in this game it's good. That's exactly what I meant.
I've argued MF in PoE is great and my favorite thing a whole bunch of times. Yeah, and now I'm better. This, and I'm like, this is better, right? That's what I've been saying. Better, right?
It's Delve, bro. It's Delve. Like, that's what I've been saying. The game gets more difficult and you get more incentivized to upgrade your character, and that feeds into the gameplay loop of finding better gear to upgrade your character to do the harder content. Number goes up, you're happy, dopamine. Like, it's just good.
But I've argued not just in my stream on this podcast, like fucking 100 times. How much I love MF and PoE, and I don't want it to go anywhere, and it's so good.
Yeah, I remember the best feeling in the game for you is being able to force all uniques in the game to drop on the ground. That's like verbatim Beller, 90%.
Exactly. I'm playing this, and I think this system's better. I like this more.
Can you clarify for some absolute noob like me who only played to level 49, how does this game exactly do MF?
Well, it kind of does, and it kind of doesn't.
Well, there's no MF stats on gear. You just by enhancing your end game.
No MF on gear. The most difficult content.
Yeah.
If I can do 800 and you guys can only do 200, suck shit, I get more loot than you.
Yeah, you get like
But it's
an
not on
extra
my
200
gear.
item rarity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also LP bonuses.
Yes.
Yeah. And it just, I don't know, that feels better. I might be changing my mind. I might be a fucking convert.
I mean, no, I mean it's like you gotta experience it and all. And I think this game does actually provide that. Like it provides the ability to experience that because it's just better because I think ARPGs are about the power dynamic and MF items go against that. They're like the inverse of power dynamic because you're literally making yourself weaker to get more stuff, but you're still able to do the same shit and the game is like static. So like again, like Delve.
I think the second half of that is the problem. The first half is okay. You're making yourself weaker to find more. The second half is the problem that regardless, you're still going to be able to do the hardest content in the game with ease.
Well,
right? If it meant that you really meaningfully have to go down and
because
a bunch of tiers.
In PoE, I'm making myself weaker to get more loot. In this game, I'm making myself stronger to get more loot.
The power
that feels better twice. That's way better.
I think the PoE devs have actually argued that once you've completely and absolutely min-maxed your character, then there's nothing else, and that's when Quant is like the next stat that you try to min-max. But it doesn't work that way because
let me turn the knob up to harder content then.
Yeah, exactly. Like you might hate to hear this as an MF item, but MF items in PoE are D3 sets. There's no difference. Like it's like you're using Goldworm, Salima, fucking Ventors, and Great Wolf or Simplex, and that's like every build has that. And if you can't use that, shit build, reroll. Like that's essentially that's what your brain thinks when you're MFing, right? If your goal is to min max MF, if it can't fit those, bad build. Right, it's just as simple as that. And you might argue like, oh, but the fun, I have fun playing different shit. It's like, yeah, sure, but to what extent would you like to sacrifice one part of the game that's fun for you, which is finding more stuff, and the other part that's more fun for you? Like you're basically having to be like, I have to sacrifice my fun to have like a little bit more fun on this other side, which just never feels good. Right.
It is still more fun to MF. Like I'm sacrificing 50 fun here to do MF, which is 65 fun.
Exactly.
That's great. I've gained fun, but like here I'm getting it on both sides. I'll take both ends, thanks.
Yeah.
Also, I just quantified fun as a number, which is not real. But you get the idea.
No, I absolutely get it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like MF in PoE. And I like MF in Last Epoch. And so if a system can appeal to both people who like MF and people who hate MF, it has to be a good system.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
And somebody in chat said he doesn't know how he feels about infinite difficulty yet. The thing about infinite difficulty is that it's not infinite, right? There will always be a point where you can't progress. And I think that's also where Delve failed the most. Like, because Delve actually got completely outscaled, and it just became a right-click simulator of like, it's no longer about like, it's just like solved. It's like you right-click all the way to 6K. The people that you see now, they're like beyond 6K. Like it's like it's meaningless. It's just how much of like your time are you willing to?
How much time did you spend there?
There's absolutely no other thing stopping
thing.
Yeah. But like there should be a point where like literally nobody can progress past, and therefore it is not infinite, right? Like,
because that also does have a problem where like the top 10 people are sitting at the same depth, all fighting to get down the next thing, and then it's like a big deal. Oh, I made it 3.
That's how it was in Synthesis Delve, where it was like me and 4 other dudes, and we were fighting over like 10 depths, and then like we'd spend like days on one node, and you'd just be like, "Fuck!" And you see them go up like one depth, you're like, "Holy shit!" And then you call them up on Discord. It's like, "How did you do that? What did you do?" Like like all this stuff. Yeah, it's good.
I remember watching you and Mothra go back and forth a few times.
Yeah. We were just like, it's so good. That was like the best time ever for me in Path of Exile. Also because there was a ladder, there was a community, we loved and hated each other. and it felt finally like PoE was like actually like a multiplayer game, and it was like a difficult game, and it was an interesting game because there was problems to solve. There was like I had to like have my eyes open. I had to have two hands, and I was rewarded for my time. It was good.
I was forced to use all 12 IQ points.
Yes, exactly.
Huge.
At full capacity.
Yeah.
But again, like some people might disagree with me, right? So there's no right and wrongs here. It's just my opinion as a gamer. And yeah, I have no experience in game dev either, so I just approach things as like, what do I like as a gamer? I have a shitload of experience in playing games, probably more experience than almost any game dev out there, because if they had as much experience in me playing games, they wouldn't be able
have time to become
a game dev.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the sort of like maybe perspective I can provide, but yeah, definitely not a technical perspective.
No, that's fair. I think that it's great hearing that from you specifically, Tuna, because obviously you're one of the guys who's always associated with Delve and with the original concept of like Delve pushing as deep as possible. And yeah, it feels silly that with any build now, the question is not like how deep can it go? Can I get to this depth or not? But it's just like, what does it take to get it there? Right? It's not a question anymore of what number can we maximum see.
Very difficult issue to solve, right? Because is it a scaling issue or is it a power creep issue? And honestly, in PoE, it's both, and it's very problematic.
Yeah, it reminds me of a conversation we had earlier today on the stream where we talked about. This loops back to what I said earlier, where I wasn't sure whether I feel okay in Last Epoch with taking a little bit longer to fight every pack and fighting it mechanically, simply because I don't know the game as much as I know PoE. And yeah, the conversation that we had earlier today was like, it's pretty hard to prevent that in a game that's running for 10 years, right? Because you know it so well in and out that you're always, no matter what it is, even if it's like the tiniest little part of the build, the tiniest little factor of convenience, but you miss it, you feel bad about it because you expect it and take it for granted after all these years. So it's really hard for them to take something away.
That is true.
Which, yeah, I hope that they're going to be able to successfully do that with PoE too. Which, I mean, that's
I hope so too. I think they will succeed. I have absolutely no doubt. Like, I know this stream is about Last Epoch, but I think grinding gear games just they're like on another planet, right? Like, and I'm pretty sure anybody that like, I almost feel like to make a game, the prerequisites should be play Path of Exile first. You know, like that's the kind of stance I have on games. Like, you want to get into game dev? All right, play PoE. Here you go.
You think any Diablo 4 devs played Path of Exile?
I mean, they probably did, but Diablo, unfortunately, is such a big ship, and there's so many people, and it's such a corporate world that, like, if you're a developer, like, there's so many talented and amazing developers at Blizzard, passionate, like, they're amazing, right? But why the fuck would he speak up? Like, who is he gonna? He's like, oh, I think this is shit. It's like, who the like? There's like 3,000 people here. Like, who are you? You know, like,
it reminds me
with Blizzard
of those streams where it's like Twitch chat plays. So many of the problems in D4 feels like, you know, Twitch chat does game dev, where I know the devs are all trained. I'm not trying to say, oh, they're just Twitch chat, but like that level of competing opinions and ideas all getting mashed together, and one person's over here doing this thing and that person's over here doing that thing, and they never communicate because they shouldn't need to, but they do need to, and so the system feels bifurcated, and so much of a mess that you don't see with smaller projects where companies like From Software, that can make a small focused thing that does exactly what it means to and nothing else. Path of Exile, it does exactly what it means to. Even going down to games like Hades, they're just so good because the devs are able to really focus in on, this is what we are about. Yes, there are other things in the world. We don't care about those. That's not our plan here.
That's what makes them good. Of course, good can be subjective, but when like as many people agree about something, you can collectively also say like, yeah, that's good. Like you look at Terraria, just today hit 1 million overwhelmingly positive reviews.
Wow,
that's a good indicator that the game is good. You know,
yes.
Like So, yeah.
I think I need to play that.
Yeah, you need to play Terraria. One of the best.
Yeah, chat reminded me just right now here that they're doing the podcast hosting for me. Tim Stick said we were on Tanky's outro.
Right. So,
well, just one more sentence. I quickly want to throw it in. Awesome to hear from you, Tuna, that you have the same unshattered confidence in PoE 2. I was like at a low point with my confidence like a year or two ago, and like it's still today when we had the conversations in my chat. There's plenty of people saying that they don't trust in PoE 2, that they're not looking forward to it. They kind of lost faith in GGG. But like since I played PoE 2 at Gamescom, I know that is exactly the game that I want to play, and I can't wait for it to come out. But LE has really good things about it. I don't want to talk it down. It's maybe not my new favorite game, but it's definitely an amazing and eye-opening ARPG release. That
it's in the list. Yeah.
It's so nice to have.
Focusing on what matters for the most part. That's what they did really well. So, Tanky, what can we look forward in terms of your content to?
So I think the most demanded thing is a build guide for my explosive ballista dive bomb Falconer. That's coming soon. I just need to work out all the kinks. We're working on it. But I'd also like to give a huge shout out to Last Epoch having a true offline mode, because I have a very low tolerance for server issues. And if it wasn't for the offline mode, I'd be playing Deep Rock Galactic Survivor right now.
That's so good, by the way.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have time to talk about how good that game is too, but if you're looking for a little side bitch to play, great.
Maybe I gotta try it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely do it. And it's only $10. As you get so much I found out of it. I already played just the demo early access last year for 20 hours plus.
Yes, me too. Yeah, and so offline mode, it's been great. I've had a great time with Last Epoch.
Great. Balor, any closing remarks?
I got nothing. I don't know how much LE content I'm gonna make because of my own mental blockage. I don't feel knowledgeable enough yet to be informing people on what to do. But I'm playing it and I'm loving it. And
it's a unique perspective, don't you? A lot of times when making Path of Exile content, wish you could put yourself into the shoes of a new player and like specifically know what is good.
You misunderstood. I'm aware that I should be. It's a mental block, not a this would be wrong to do.
Okay, fair. No, I mean I'm pretty much in a similar situation. Other than like, I already have that problem with PoE content to some degree. You're doing much better than I do with that. But yeah, no, great. I guess I'll just stick to my own advice then. As for the podcast, before I forget it, we wanted to end it. So I want to thank you guys for coming on. Thanks, Tuna and Tanky, for making time to appear here in this very busy launch weekend. And yeah, I hope you have plenty of fun still with the game. Guys, if you were listening to the podcast and you're not familiar for whatever reason with Tuna or Tanky, go and check out their podcast, their contents. They will be linked in the description down below. As always, the podcast is uploaded in full. You can rewind it and listen to it from the beginning if you missed any specific part of it. It will be on Spotify and YouTube with video, and then it's also available on all audio podcast platforms as audio purely. The next Faded will be in a week from now. It's not completely set in stone yet, so I'll announce it on my Twitter in a couple of days from now, as soon as it comes together. And well, other than that, there was probably something else that I forgot to say, but no, I forgot it. Can't say it anymore. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and enjoy gaming. Thanks for tuning in, and see you for the next one. Bye-bye, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It was fun.
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash.
Wait, I should have pressed end stream. This is where it ends. Damn, outro wasn't long enough.